right, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. So glad to see so many people here. We'll start with, Wayne, would you please ask prayer?
Yes, I will. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we'd just like to thank you for waking us up this morning, dear Lord, and thank you for your many blessings. And dear Lord, let's pray for the sick and shut in. And dear Lord, also let's have a special prayer for the Poston and Satterfield family for their loss. And dear Lord, let us make wise and just decisions as we conduct county business today. These and all the blessings in my Heavenly Father's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Careful.
Thank you. Before I open the meeting for the approval of a consent agenda, I just wanted to mention, and Wayne mentioned, the loss of Patricia Paulson Satterfield, who passed away this week. This is truly a fabulous citizen that is a tremendous loss to us in the county. She grew up in Middlesex County and returned in retirement to serve as chairman of the Heritage Committee and a member of our Historic Courthouse Committee. She was honored last year at the 35th anniversary Ellis Island Medals of Honor Award. Her father served many years here in Middlesex as a dentist who served everyone in the county. She graduated from Howard University and in Indiana University School of Music. With her law degree from St. John's University, she served as a judge in New York District Court and the U.S. Court of Appeals, Second Circuit. She was truly a role model of whom Middlesex County will always be proud, and she will be missed. I will now seek approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if we
Oh,
may,
I'm
please,
sorry,
we
we-
need to have a roll call, please, and
Oh,
then
I'm
address
sorry.
the two electronic members, please.
That's right.
First, a roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Jesse?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Williams? Mr. Kimbrough?
Here. Mr. Williams and Mr. Kuntz informed the board that they would be unable to attend this meeting in person today, and they asked to be allowed to join the meeting electronically. So we must follow the Board of Supervisors policy and rules of procedure established for electronic participation in meetings due to a personal matter or disability. I will begin with Supervisor Williams. Supervisor Williams, why are you asking for approval to participate in this meeting electronically? Kevin,
He needs to unmute.
I think you're on mute.
Because I have a medical problem.
Thank you.
A medical procedure.
I see, thank you.
John's here too, Mr. Chair.
The board must have a majority vote to approve Supervisor Williams' participation in the meeting by electronic means. May we have a roll call requesting all those in favor of allowing Supervisor Williams to participate by electronic means?
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Let the minutes reflect the reason for Supervisor Williams' participation by electronic means and his location of attendance, which is remote at a medical facility, and that his attendance electronically has been approved. I will now ask Supervisor Kuntz, why are you asking for approval to participate in this meeting electronically?
I am at a work conference in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Thank you. The board must have a majority vote to approve Supervisor Kuntz's participation by electronic means. May we have a roll call?
Mr. Williams? Oh, sorry. Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Let the minutes reflect the reason for Supervisor Kuntz' participation by electronic means and his location of attendance with specifics. Thank you. Got my house in order now. Okay. I will entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda on our,
So moved.
thank you.
Second it.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Jesse. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. I will now open the floor for our public comment period. This is the first of two public comment periods that we have each meeting. There's another one at the end of each meeting in case anyone can't make this time frame. I'll open the floor. Do we have speakers who
I-
requested?
I do. I have 5 registered public speakers. Up first is Deborah Miller, Pine Top. I'll double check.
Hi, Deborah.
I'm not sure that that's working.
Okay, let's try it. Good afternoon, board members and staff. I'm Deborah Miller. I'm located at 36 Wild Goose Drive, Hardyville, Pine Top District, and I have a business located in Deltaville on Broad Creek and also off of Fishing Bay Road. I would like to address the board this afternoon about a critical issue with the shoaling in Broad Creek, and it was readily available this past weekend after a weather event early Sunday morning caused extensive damage to Regatta Point Marina, which is located at the mouth of the creek. And for anyone who's not familiar with Regatta Point, it is a beautiful marina, and it prevents a great welcome into the Broad Creek area. Fortunately, during that event, there was no loss of life or injuries, but there was extensive damage both to the facility and the boats in the marina. My husband, Brian, was able to connect with one of our commercial boat customers on Sunday afternoon and have them mobilize a tug and barge to assist in the recovery cleanup. A 60-foot wide barge was pushed into the creek by one of the push boats that we had built. The tug captain reported back that there was shoaling all the way across the navigational channel, especially by the middle green marker. The push boat was able to push through the shoaling only because it is equipped with what we call stump jumpers, and they protect the running gear. Most boats do not have that. There are many large vessels, including deep draft sailboats, that are housed in Broad Creek. Damage to those vessels from the shoaling would cause extensive cost to repair hulls, rudders, and props. Supervisor Kimbrough has worked tirelessly in an attempt to move this critical dredging project forward, beginning as early as 2019 when he first addressed the board about the dredging that was needed in the months before he was even elected to the Board of Supervisors. The marinas in Deltaville have supported that effort by conducting informational meetings, contacting officials, studying alternatives, and LUD has been with them every step of the way. Broad Creek is home to 10-plus marinas, I'm not sure exactly how many, boat slips in the hundreds, and a commercial boat building facility. It is a main artery to the marine industry of Deltaville. The Economic Development Authority, under the guidance of Trent Funkhauser, is doing a great job marketing the waterfront areas of Middlesex for both tourism and opportunities for marine industrial development. I have attended pretty much all of the Board of Supervisor meetings for the last 4 years. The need for dredging the creeks of Middlesex has been a topic at many board meetings. The county has worked with the Middle Peninsula Planning District, but to date, no dredging has been scheduled. Those of us who depend on an open navigational channel in Broad Creek are frustrated by this situation. If a natural disaster occurs, whether it be a tornado, a nor'easter, or a hurricane, anything that requires debris removal in the creek, there is a strong possibility that the proper equipment will not be able to navigate the creek, leading to a potentially larger environmental disaster. I would invite the members of the board and also the administration staff to take a field trip to Broad Creek. We'll even escort you if you like in a skiff. Surveying the destruction that was caused by a freak wind event and the resulting damage to that marina and the areas around it should paint a grim picture of what the future might hold if we continue down this path of inaction. Whatever you can do to get this dredging done, I'm telling you, it is critical. Thank you for your time.
Our next public speaker is Walter Boone of Pine Top.
Would it be possible for me to reserve whatever time I'm allotted to such time as we are addressing the item on the agenda that I'm here about?
I'm not exactly clear what you're asking.
Well, I'm here about the Healy's Mill issue, and I don't know that I need to say anything, and I think saying something now is premature. I'm just a homeowner.
The way that our meeting is conducted, there won't be an opportunity for public input when we're receiving a presentation about Healy's Mill. So if you'd like to address that, now would be the time.
You want me to address it now?
It's now or...
If it's now or never, it'll be now. Okay. I'm just a homeowner on the lower pond. And of course, they are already, because the Virginia Authority, VCR, is now draining the pond because we're not up to speed on the safety. And we're trying to get a temporary license. We need to get a simplified study, which can only be accomplished if VDOT abandons the roadway, as it appears they don't intend to repair it. No one else is coming forward to repair the dam and sufficient to maintain the highway. We're just looking to reduce the status of that dam so that it would be at least feasible to repair it. And that's my only comment.
Okay. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just to avoid any confusion, we do have the Healy's Mill HOA on the agenda under the VDOT section. So
there's a representative of the
yes,
HOA?
Mr. Timothy Earnhardt is here.
Okay.
And,
And that would be one...
He's
one
representing
speaker.
a group, that's correct.
Right, okay. If
Yeah.
he's representing a group that's here, then it would be redundant for the group to speak and all say the same.
Potentially, unless they had other things to add, that's correct.
It's up to the judgment of the public. Thank you, Walter.
And I do have another speaker registered, and it is Tim Earnhardt. He's a registered speaker, a registered public speaker. He's going to pass.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, if Tim is here and he's prepared, just to have his remarks as part of the VDOT presentation.
Yeah,
because
that's fine.
You're getting a briefing on VDOT on the matter, and I think Tim has a request he wants to
Okay.
make from the
That makes
Homeowners
sense.
Association. And just for the public here this evening, we've had a number of letters submitted to the board on the matter, and all that's being made part of the public record because they came in over the weekend and they've been distributed to the board. Anybody wants a copy of that, check with Tammy Lynn and we'll get you a copy.
The next public speaker I have is Melinda Burnett of Hartfield.
Yes, and I don't know whether it's appropriate at this time, because of the discussion you just had, should I wait until Tim speaks? Because it is on the Healy's Mill, Stormont Road situation.
All of these here, a number of them
Yeah.
have put in requests to speak as well. So,
It's up to the board.
So, I can't recall an instance where we had a presentation to the board and then there were a number of other speakers speaking on a related matter. Am I clear? I mean, help me with protocol here.
I think it would be, if the public wishes to get up and speak on the Healy's Mill, this is absolutely your time to do so. Later in the meeting agenda, your HOA representative is going to speak, not the collective group, just your representative. So if you have individual comments, we can't tell you not to speak, and we don't want to be viewed in that light. So we're trying to very delicately say, if you want to say something other than what your HOA rep's going to say, please come up and speak. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be as simple as, we support what Tim's getting ready to
Yeah.
say. But, yeah.
Yeah, but we're not telling you not to speak.
All right. Then I have very limited comments, and I'll go with it, and then we will go on with that. How about that?
Yes, that works. Okay, that'll work.
That sounds good.
My husband and I moved.
I'm sorry, we need your name and,
Melinda Burnett, and it is 1326 Healy's Mill Road, Hartfield.
thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, Jim and I bought property here in 2008, and we love it. We love Middlesex County. At that time, even then, Stormont Road, Healy's Mill, the dam, was a lot of confusion. No one seemed to want to take responsibility for the status of it, whether it was the state, the county, or VDOT. So here we are today. So just a few comments about it. It's a surprise to us that no one has accepted responsibility at this point for the closed road and the storm-damaged road and the dam. I think the people of Healy's Mill subdivision, and I live on the upper pond, so I'm speaking for the folks down on the lower pond, have been sort of left in uncertainty of their property value for 18 years because of, I guess, the depreciating lower dam. And now that the DCR is overseeing our pond future and declared the lower dam unsafe, the citizens have sort of banded together, and we believe we can work with the state and the county and VDOT. But for this dam to be in compliance with a low hazard classification, I think the other gentleman just spoke about that, Middlesex County needs to directly notify VDOT that they do not intend or desire putting the roadway back into service. So my question to you, is there a future plan within the county to bring the dam and the road back up to where it can be used by traffic? We have the understanding that you guys have the power to help us fix this. Just let us know what your plans are. Give us a little peace of mind over our property values if we lose that pond and the dam. You can imagine those of us that live on the waterfront, our property values are going to tank. And that's going to affect you too, because our taxes will be less as well. So we're hoping that we can get some type of consideration and some decisions made on this, because we're sort of that standing point right here with the state, DCR, and VDOT. So we would appreciate your help with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more speaker was registered, Sandy Murphy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all. I'm going to start off by reading a letter from two of our new residents who moved in June, and they specifically requested that we read this letter to the Board of Supervisors. And they've been really the main ones to spearhead the possibility of us fixing the dam ourselves. We, as the homeowners around Healy's Dam, are not the owners of the dam itself. We're only owners of the homes around it. We have wanted it for a long time to make fixes. We know that legally we are precluded from making those fixes. Sometimes, like last year when a culvert washed out, we went ahead and did it anyway, much to the consternation of VDOT. So we are in kind of this sticky situation of trying to preserve something that isn't ours. But why I want to read this letter to you today is because these new residents that moved in to Healy's Pond wanted to work with some of us. We're not asking the HOA to commit themselves financially, but they raised the possibility of coming up with a group that could financially address some of the problems. So we're not asking for taxpayer money. We're not asking for the Board of Supervisors. This is a plan that is afoot and is not concluded, but this is the main reason why we're here today. And I think, Matt, you're probably aware of some of that. So, and I think you've talked to Jeff and Audra, right? All right. Well, Jeff and Audra wanted me to read this to the rest of the board members, so I'll do that. Can you all hear me? I don't know if, okay. We are Jeff and Audra Arestivo, and we recently purchased 4775 Stormont Road, Hartfield, Virginia, in June of this year. We live in New York and are unable to attend this meeting, but we appreciate you reading our letter of intent. We purchased the property for retirement, but in the meantime have secured zoning approval and a business permit from Middlesex County to operate as a short-term vacation rental property. That said, the beautiful Healy's Pond is paramount to our investment as well as our personal satisfaction. We purchased the property with the understanding that the road has been closed since 2005 due to damage caused by vehicular traffic, that the dam was not rated for, and then further damaged by a hurricane. We thought the road closure was the fix, and that was the end. Since June, we have come to understand the dire state of disrepair that the dam is in and the extent of the repair that's needed. We are very much committed, both personally and financially, to aiding in the repair of the dam, but that is only feasible if the road is to remain closed and we can secure a low hazard classification. Given that the road has been closed since 2005 and is now closing in on, yes, Mr. Harris.
Her time has expired, or is it the will of the board to allow her to finish reading this? Okay.
All right. Thank you, and I'm sorry. Yeah. Given that the road has been closed since 2005 and is now closing in on 2 decades later, the community at large has adjusted to the new routes, and our understanding is that a new road, Highway 33, has been constructed and serves as the alternative. Our further understanding is that when this road was open, cars would speed through the very quiet neighborhood and trucks would damage the roads. I think I'm going to skip that since we're short on time. Since buying our property, we've had the wonderful experience of meeting several of our new neighbors. I'm going to skip that. We've met many young people who walk over to fish in the pond because it's so beautiful and the fishing is great. The beautiful, peaceful, and safe lifestyle of this community depends on the continuance of the pond and the maintenance of the low hazard designation. We are asking the county and VDOT to agree that the road remain closed in perpetuity, and that whoever needs to put that in writing to please do so. Once that is completed, we can secure the low hazard classification and move forward with the reconstruction of the dam so that we can once again connect our HOA community through use of this dam for foot and bike traffic. I have Vivian's letter too, but I think I've outdone myself, so.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. And I'll just note that we have in hand 3 additional letters
I think one of them was the one that she was reading from Jeff and Audra
Okay, so
Arestivo.
there are 2 in addition to that essentially make the same request that the road be permanently closed. Any other speakers?
I have no other submitted speakers. I don't know if there's any others.
The floor is open. Would anybody else like to address the board? Seeing no one else, I'll close the public comment period. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the treasurer's report, and Tracy told me that she did have a conflict, so she might not be here. Her report is on pages 34 through 39 of the packet. Also, Commissioner of the Revenue next, and May also is not here in person. Her report is on page 40 of the packet.
Mr. Kimball?
Sites, if you have something that you need to get, because our next topic may be a little bit lengthy, if we can move up the school matters to the first agency and staff reports, maybe that'd be helpful.
I will jump on that.
You're not interested in dams and bridges? Pond?
Could you hold a minute? I have a question for our county administrator.
Yes, sir.
In regard to Tracy's report. Initially, several months ago, when we talked about investing some of the proceeds of the county. She had a little bit of resistance to that. She did do it, and
Cautious, yeah, she was a little cautious to it.
okay. I guess my question, which I would be asking her, but maybe you can convey that, does she feel more comfortable on how we're doing with that project?
Yes, she does. I had an opportunity to speak to her briefly about it about a month ago and again last week, and I think we have about $12 million invested at this point.
Good.
And that is very good. And we're just communicating very closely, so as we need monies for major projects or whatnot, we'll give her a heads up so we can pull those out of those investments.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Walker?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking at her math, it seemed like we were on the path to generate $1 million worth of income. Great, thank you.
Well, there's your budget surprise for December that's just ruined. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you for letting me go ahead of some of the other projects that you have. On page 47, you'll see a budget supplement request. Both of the line items there have to do with grants. The first is actually a carryover from FY23, the school-based health workforce grants combination from the Virginia Department of Health and the Virginia Department of Education that supports clinical support in addition to our school nurses that was put in place at the beginning of the pandemic. And the second grant, we refer to it as the IREPO grant. That is actually our work through RCC, where they support tuition reimbursement and payment for at least one of our teachers to get the proper endorsement to be a dual enrollment teacher at the high school. And so we're happy to have that partnership with RCC that helps pay for that tuition for that teacher to receive that endorsement.
So both of them are included on FY 2024-11 and MSB-08?
Yes.
Am I looking at the correct stuff?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve both of those.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Jesse. Any discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, we'll start with Mr. Kuntz,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. I have a few updates for you since we've opened the school year, and then certainly I'll take questions also. So we are in our 4th week of school already, believe it or not. Our enrollment currently is 1,152. Our budget was based on 1,150. That also includes, we have 12 students who attend the Chesapeake Bay Governor School. We have 40 students who attend our Bridging Communities Technical Center and Governor STEM Academy. We have 8 students this year participating in the JROTC partnership we established last year with King and Queen County Public Schools. And we have 6 students in the welding program in our partnership with RCC. And so that's just an overall look of all these students are counted in that 1152, but just sharing with you what some of our partnerships are. We did implement the Evolved Weapons Detection System at all of our schools. That was new this year. We started on the first day of school with all of our students and staff, and I'm pleased to report it's been a very smooth transition with that system. If you were at the football game Friday night, and then Mr. Jesse was, and walked through that system, it's pretty seamless and painless to go through, but just another layer of security that we were able to add there. Following up, Mr. Harris, last month you had a question about the overflow parking at the elementary school. We were hoping to have that approved by DEQ any day now. The project application was resubmitted based on some feedback from them. If the approval comes through this month, then we're still expecting it to be finished by the spring of next year. So the work would be done during the school year. We don't see a lot of impact there to our arrivals and dismissals, but the plan right now, as long as we get approval in the next week or so, is that would be finished by the late spring.
Dr. Sykes, and you assume that's going to happen?
I assume the approval is going to be happening. Based on my conversation with Bay Design, we feel like everything has been submitted properly.
And they feel good about their submission to DEQ?
They do.
Okay. I have 2 more questions for you. The 1152 total students, Could you just give me a percentage of, or number of students based on last year's enrollment? Where do we stand?
I think we finished the year last year with 1169.
1158.6.
Sorry, here's my numbers person that corrects me. 1156?
1158.6.
1158.6 is where we finished the year last year, so I don't know where the .6 person was, but we've sent him on his merry way now. So we're about in line with where we were last year.
And what your projection was going to be for this year? You're in line with that as well?
Yes.
Okay. Last question I have is your weapons system deployment that's new. Always with all kinds of systems, there's always a negative. If you would just briefly talk about, is there anything from that system that could get through that would cause havoc or danger to anybody?
I think that's always the case in any system. The Evolved Weapons Detection System is designed to capture any items that would be responsible for mass casualty. So guns, pipe bombs, such things, assembled or disassembled. We can vary the levels of sensitivity with it. And so we can take it all the way down to that. It's got your belt buckle or a rivet in your jean pant to pick it up. We're not at that lowest level right now because the main reason we purchased this system was it was the quickest way to get all of our students and staff into the building without a delay. And so that, I don't think there's no system that's foolproof. If we went to a metal detector, then you are searching every bag and purse and things like that come through. This system is designed to scan all of that. The student doesn't have to take the backpack off, doesn't have to take the purse off. It'll scan that, and then if it detects an item, as I described it, that could be an item of mass casualty, it puts a red box around that item. And so the thing that we liked about the system also is it takes away some subjectivity. We're not just picking out certain students that we think may have something. It takes a picture, it does not save that, and it's not a facial recognition system, but it takes a picture of the person that goes through, puts a box around where the area is. So if you had something in your sock, or if you had something in your back pocket, or if you had something up here, that's the area it's going to highlight. And then we identify through a search what that item is and dismiss it and send them on through.
And is that monitored by a police officer or school staff or both?
School staff. The SROs are available at all of the schools. They're stationed at different places depending on where the school is. So right now, it's any of our administrators that are at those devices.
And have you had any experiences with moving somebody to the side to relook at what they have, to make sure? You've had instances of that, I assume, and not to assume on this, but I guess you have found that there were instances where they were pulled aside, but in fact they did not have anything that would cause anybody any problem.
That's correct. Some of the things it does alert to are the type of Chromebooks that we have. So the students now will take those out, pass those around the system to an adult. If you have an umbrella in your bag, it's going to alert. Eyeglass cases, it alerts on. 3-ring binders that are larger 3-ring binders. And so the students, high school students have Chromebooks that go back and forth, so they take those out. At the middle school, they have more binders, so they take those out and move those around. What we ran into at the elementary school is that we may have a little one with an eyeglass case that wears glasses. And I was there for the deployment, especially at the at the elementary school for the first few days. And as soon as it alerted and the student came around and she had eyeglasses on, my first question was, do you have an eyeglass case? So the eyeglass case comes out, student goes back through the device to confirm that there's no more alerts, and then we know that this is, and so especially with the younger ones, the administration has communicated with the parent. They just need to always take this out. This is going to alert every time. If they had a rolling backpack with some of the metal handles, those were alerting. And so what they were doing was just calling parents to say if there's another type of backpack your child can use or has to use, that would be easier because they will have to be pulled over and the item gets searched every day if it alerts.
Sounds like things are working pretty well with that. Thank you, Dr. Seitz. Ms. Murray, for being here, and I'm glad that it's working as we had hoped it would work.
We are too.
To give people peace of mind and a safety feeling.
Another layer, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Sykes, I'd like to say that I did attend your convocation. It was one of the most, I guess in the years that I've been on the Board of Supervisors here, one of the best ones that I have, because you had all staffs and all schools and departments involved in it, and I was just give you, commend you on that.
Thank you.
Also, I got another question with those security systems. Now, are they leased or bought?
They're leased.
They're leased.
They're leased.
And then you have to, in other words, every year you renew a contract. That's how that works.
So what we did this year is we've already signed and paid for a 4-year contract.
Okay.
And so for the next 4 years, we've got them already paid for. But yes, they are a leased product, because what they do is they're continuing to upgrade their software with it. They don't sell the product.
Right, okay.
And so because they're continuing to upgrade, like I said, those systems get smarter as we identify what's coming through. And so there's the screen, and you're happy to come by any morning and look at how that works. Once it alerts, then you can identify on a screen, oh, that was a notebook, or that was a Chromebook, or this was a law enforcement person who walked through, so it alerted on a gun or anything that they had. And so that information continues to go to a cloud, and the system will start to recognize what the patterns are in each of the schools. At any time, I can pull a report and I can identify, like I already know, 14,000 people have come through the Evolve system at Middlesex High School, which includes from the first day of school to at the football game. And then there's a report on how many items it alerted to, how many were dismissed, and then it'll identify, as long as we've identified correctly what the item was, and there's a little icon there that we can identify it, then we'll have a report on what items the device is alerting to.
Right. What about cell phones? Because I know like times you go to a courthouse or somewhere, you got to take your cell phone out or whatever.
Right, not a traditional metal detector.
Okay.
So right now, the way it's set, you can come through
With the cell
cell
phone.
phone and keys.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Last question, and I promise, maybe. So at the football game, that's a portable unit that's
Yes.
rolled in?
Yes.
At that point, and at the end of your 4-year lease period, y'all would reapply for grants for that?
That's our plan, is to pay attention to it. There's federal grants that will cover that also. There's state grants and then federal grants. And what our plan will be is to apply for federal grants as we're coming up on the end of that lease, so that I can just jump on to the next lease for it.
Thank you, Dr. Sykes.
ADM, extra ADM.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, and I'm glad Don answered some of them when you were talking about the grants and the money to take care of well, I was talking about money to take care of the safety devices that you all using. So now the money's being used, is being paid for by grants?
Not the devices right now. We had additional funding in the school system because of our increased ADM on what we based our budget on. And so we were able to use those funds at the end of the year to purchase the lease for the next 4 years.
Also, you're saying you got too much money, so you use the money to buy the safety devices?
We did not have too much money. The money was based on additional students that we had for FY ’23, which we used in a very smart manner, I think, with these detection systems.
Oh, if the protector system is good, I was just wondering about the grant money, and shuffling, one money to the next thing. I understand exactly what is being done. I just question, I'm just questioning how they being paid for, because, we got budgets coming up every year. And we see we get extra money, then we, decide to use it any way we see please. So I just, wanted to know, I believe in safety, the devices, and that, what I'm saying is that they're funding when you're moving money around. So, and I think like Don was saying, what we're applying for grants in the proper time, ahead of time, and doing, because grants is big, state got plenty of money, and we're not applying for them, so I'm thinking, but the tax base itself. So I do understand, and I'm glad you said, and I thank Don for asking the question. The second thing I'm asking is about the parking lot, which is 95%, I guess 95% approval. Now, is the fund for that, that's grant money too, isn't it?
It is, yes, ESSER funds, grant funds.
That's the funds. There's always the people aware that land is valuable. And sometimes we make choices that we have to make, and we don't want to back up. I hope in the near future that we can look at things, and I'm not saying the parking lot is a bad thing. I'm saying that when we get grant money and land is very valuable. It's very valuable in Middlesex County, and sometimes it's just not a good thing just to cover it up and not use some other exceptions. That's all I'm saying. Everybody got ideas, so I'm just looking at it differently. So, and the other thing is about the vocational program. Say we're sending kids to the new camp. I got that. What percentage of the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are going to new camp and bridging communities?
We've got 40 students there. I don't know if I know exactly what the exact number of 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, that's who attends. I can get you that exact percentage.
And what like 10th graders, you would think 10th graders roughly, 16 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old. And I'm concerned really in how many 10th graders will get in bridging communities, because evidently I don't know if they've established their careers or what they want to be. And if they don't get in bridging communities early enough, vocational thing we have is carpentry at the school, isn't it?
And we have the welding program at RCC, and I actually just wrote a letter of support for RCC. They're expanding their facilities there to expand the welding for high school students and HVAC and diesel mechanics. So if we get to a point where bridging is full for our students, there's 6 school divisions that participate in bridging. And the way it's grown, I do expect that it's going to get to a point where it is full and we're using up all of our seats. We have the potential then of moving over into the program that RCC is building right now.
And for them to get in a vocational program, how do you get in? It's not made for everybody. Everybody can't get in. If everybody applies, it's not a number. Is it a number? What they have to meet, if I got a son going to go in a vocational program, how does he get in it? Is somebody's getting cut off. So I'm wondering, the ones that are not going, they get caught up in the world. And I'm probably looking at the 50% child. You got kids that are going to college, for instance. We got that. You got some going to a vocational program. And you got a set that have made your mind up what you want to do here. And then the ones I'm really concerned about really are in a vocational program are doing something that you can help these kids out. And that's how come I'm asking 10th graders, how many we got in the program going to new camp.
Right. I'll have to get you the exact number of 10th graders. They work with the school counseling office, and that's why it was exciting also to have RCC expanding their program. Right now, our students for HVAC and diesel do their bridging communities, but that is part of the program that RCC is building for high school students. So like I said, once bridging gets to the point where it's full, and I expect that it will, RCC has recognized that need also will participate with them.
Okay, thank you. I'll stop by talking to you.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Reggie's talking about. I read an article very recently, that college admissions, I don't know if you've seen that or not, is going down and vocational opportunities is going up. So I would think long-term that that's certainly something we want to keep a very close eye on. And it's good that RCC is expanding their program as well.
Yes, and it is something that we do want to keep a close eye on.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuntz, do you have any questions or comments for our school?
Just one comment, when you mentioned a lot of trades, I've also been listening to the news, and I think here at mentioned nurses. Obviously, we have a huge need for those as well, and I know our programs do some there, but maybe for another day, that would be something we include when we're talking about these trades and vocations. But I think that one is very much relevant to our region and high demand. Thank you, everybody.
And bridging has a nursing program too.
They do, is it CNA training?
And I gotta speak up for RCC right now, because I think they have the top, or one of the top 3 nursing programs in the state of Virginia. Very, very good, prominent program.
That's good. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Next is VDOT report. Lee, welcome back.
Kevin, the microphone's not working.
It started with like 3 bars. I thought it might be.
I can talk really loudly.
Our problem is our electronic communications. So people on stage cannot hear
Hope our audience appreciates, we have the most highly trained battery replacement technician of any county I've ever seen. It's our blessing.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm here to present on our shared use path project there in Deltaville and really present 2 options to the board. Before I get going into this, I really want to thank Mr. Walker and Mr. Kretz for dropping what they were doing in the 11th hour and jumping on phone calls, and we were really working hard on this one to get this one nailed down for y'all, for these options. So the first option that we discussed a while back was to proceed with the phase 1 of the shared use path, and just to refresh everyone's memory, that's the section from the rescue squad to Jackson Creek Road, and then phase 2 southwest along Jackson Creek down to the museum. There's a few stipulations on that. You know, we have to, there is audit requirements with the federal TAP program in meeting that logical termini, which we think we're going to meet. And then the county would also be required to add the phase 2 portion down Jackson Creek as part of their comp plan, which we discussed. And then also be required to pass a resolution to apply for that TAP funding for phase 2 in the next round of TAP. So that's the first option for this project. The second option, which I'm pleased to announce, we went back to central office and we were really looking at ways just to get this project rolling. I think everyone at this point just wants to see something done. And we got to looking at it with central office, and they agreed to actually increase the project allocation of federal funds to $2.5 million. So that would be for a total of $3.125 million, including the $625,000 match from the county. There were extra funds available presently, right now, for localities like Middlesex and Deltaville, so we thought it was a good opportunity to jump at that and present this to the board. Just to, full disclosure, if project cost increase, I just want to make sure this is well known, the locality would be responsible for the overage. So I just want to put that out there. And again, the original scope of this project was from the rescue squad to Green Cove Road. That was the original scope, and that's what they suggested that we do with this extra funding, go to Green Cove Road as part of the original scope. The estimate for that project, as the most recent estimate that we have done, was $3.5 million. So just be aware of that. There's some other things that we could potentially look at. We were talking with county staff about a shared use path is by code 10 feet, and we're talking about potentially shoring that up to 8 feet. It would require a design waiver, which we think we could be successful at getting. And just to stress this again, if number 2 is the option that the board chooses to go with, it will require CTB approval, and any overages, again, the county would be responsible for. So those are the 2 options with that. I don't know how you want to proceed with that, Matt.
Well, just real quick, Mr. Chairman, I'll chime in and I'll just, while we're having the love fest here, throw it back on VDOT, because Lee, without, I think, yours, Michelle's, and Catherine's guidance and work with the central office, we'd be in a very different place right now. And I'm going to keep my peace for a moment longer and listen to what the board has to think about these options. But I will say one thing. If we went with option 2, the original scope of the project gets us past a choke point, a bottleneck, if you will, on 33, that makes it exponentially easier to complete the latter phases of the multipurpose path project, because we're basically getting into properties where we know we have very favorable property owners wanting to support the project, and things get a lot easier once we get through that bottleneck. So VDOT's potential award of $2.5 million for this project is timely and well done, well spent, if we choose that option.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions?
Sorry. Mr. McKnight, I have one question. I noticed down here on number 2, option 2, estimated cost to be as high as $3.5 million. Going back up to highlighted in black, revert back to original scope but increase. So when you say original scope, that's back to number 1. Is that correct?
The original scope, what the county applied for originally, was from the rescue squad to Green Cove Road.
Correct.
And when we got to digging into, and we've discussed that estimate, the award was for $800,000 of federal dollars and a $200,000 match from the county for a total of about $1 million. And it just wasn't going to get there. So we had to try to shore up that scope, try to find a different way to get this project rolling. What that's saying is revert back to that original scope. They would increase the federal dollars from the original amount to $2.5 million for a total of $3.125 million, including the match from the county. And then any overages from that would be the responsibility of the county.
Okay, you'll have to do that a little slower.
Okay.
The 2.5 is an increased amount of federal funding for the project that we're talking about. But is option 2 looking at it, that it could be as high as 3.5? Is that what I'm hearing?
That was when we did the estimate, yes. The most recent estimate, and again, it's just an estimate. This is really dependent on a lot of different factors with right-of-way, with utility, relocation. We try to make it a worst-case scenario, but it's logical, just based on what we're seeing with right-of-way impacts and utility impacts.
Okay.
And that's the most expensive part of this project.
So,
And if I may just real quick, Mr. Harris,
You can.
one of the reasons we may want to consider the design waiver request, shrinking the width down from 10 feet to 8 feet. It's easier to get through certain tight squeezes with 8 feet as opposed to 10. That may affect project costs as well.
And that's
Spend our dollars, so to speak.
And as Mr. Walker pointed out, it doesn't have to be 8 feet the entire way, but there might be a location, for example, where shrinking it down to 8 feet will reduce the amount of right-of-way impacts or cost in that location, and that would have an impact on the overall estimate.
okay, follow-up for that. Let's say we go along with the 2.5, realizing that there may be some escalated cost with federal funding. Let's say that for whatever reason, and we can pull a bunch of them out of the hat, we get to the 2.5, but the 3.5 is not necessarily feasible for the board and/or the county. Do we have wiggle room to put some sort of brakes on that?
Well, yes, sir. I believe we always have that wiggle room, but we really do need to, and I don't mean to press the board, but we do need to move quickly on that option because this money is old at this point. It's been sitting there for about 3 years, and I know Mr. Kimbrough has been very adamant about spending it, and we do need to spend it because it's federal dollars and it has certain strings attached with that. So we would look to move very quickly with it.
Okay, and are you looking for a decision on that today?
I'll leave that up.
What's your time frame?
The sooner the better.
That means a lot of
Yeah.
different things to a lot of different people.
I will say with the option one, that cannot be decided today, because I think there would have to be things that would have to go into the comp plan, and there would need to be some preparation for those options, and the resolution obviously would need to be passed by the board. So that does not need to be necessarily decided today, but I would encourage the board to not. This is a good opportunity, I think, with the extra funding. Either way, I just want to see something get built for the citizens out there, but we were successful in getting extra funds, and I think that's a rarity, to be honest with you.
Great.
I'll take Lee off the heat a little bit, Mr. Chairman, if I can. I would ask the board to look at it this way. Even at $3.5 million, if we had to come out of pocket with a little over $1 million, you're leveraging $2.5 million from the federal government into our community. So the money will go somewhere. If we don't pounce on it, it'll go somewhere. And again, from my standpoint, I think Dave and Mark would agree, if we can get this, the potentially most expensive leg of the project done, it gets exponentially easier to deploy further paths in and through Deltaville. So this is perhaps the hardest. That's why we started there. I mean, the other option we had was a bridge, a pier. So.
I'd like to hear what the chairman has to say, since it is in his district.
So as Lee mentioned, I have been advocating for this. It is, in my opinion, probably the biggest safety danger that we have in the county. It is a narrow two-lane road that goes between trees, and there's no way to escape. But there are literally hundreds of visitors and boaters who are out on Stingray Point that need to get into town, and by bicycle or by walking, they just have no path. So we've been blessed so far in that we haven't had an accident, but it's just a matter of time. So from an urgency standpoint, yesterday is barely soon enough, I think, in terms of its safety protocol. And as far as the commitment of the citizens, at least in my district, I'll tell you that after our last meeting, I had citizens call me and volunteer to create a path with cinders if that would solve the problem. It's that important to the citizens. And I really appreciate your finding a way to step up with this significant funding. I'll never understand why it costs $3.5 million to make a path that's like this, but it's a good thing I'm not an engineer, I guess.
Sometimes I wish I wasn't.
I would ask the board, let's go. I really feel like we've got this bird in hand, and we ought to leverage it right away, commit to taking the funds. Reggie or John, do you have any comments?
I thought the most eloquent was yesterday. Doesn't seem, I can't redo it. No, we need to do this. We don't get opportunities at government money like this, and we've engaged well with DDOT, and we already have a champion there. This project's ready to go. It's funded, and it's long overdue. So I'm fully supportive and look forward to a unanimous vote.
Mr. Williams, any comments?
Yeah, just one. I know at the last meeting when we approved to extend the road down to the road that goes to the museum. Now we're saying we're going back to phase 2. Are we talking about going back to the old drawing that we're building bridges across the pond and all of that? Or we keep it straight down 33 and then widening in the road and keep on down to the arenas and maybe backlash to the museum, so you have somewhere to go. So my thing is that it's good to have, the money and funding and all of that, but I was sure that when we talk about the past and all of this, are we talking off the road then when you get to 33 and going back on one of the proposals that we drew up, that we voted against last time to stop right there? Are we talking about this particular proposal where you keep straight down 33 and then winding that and use that money to benefit that way?
So yes, the original scope, Mr. Williams, was to go from the rescue squad to Green Cove Road. So the second option that I presented is to that original scope, straight down 33 from the rescue squad, shared use path to Green Cove Road.
And that's where that particular one is gonna stop it. That's what, I'm wondering where it's gonna run to. That's my only thing. Because we have talked about increasing the width of the road so you could keep straight down the road and the cost will be down a lot more than what we are saying. Always because if we can get the money, we can go back to the original plan, which we build little bridges across the ponds and all that kind of stuff. I just want to know exactly what I'm voting for, that's all.
Yeah, that's what you're voting for today in terms of where it ends up. Yeah, I mean, that's really up to the county. If you want to continue it down 33, apply for additional funding in later years with different programs, you can go down side roads, Green Cove Road, other roads. That's really up to the county. But this specific option here is to build a path from the rescue squad to Green Cove Road.
Reggie, I would just clarify that I've spoken to a number of marina owners who are the property owners along much of that stretch from the Stingray Point Marina, which is the farthest east marina. The marina property owners from there west back towards Green Cove Road, it's not all marina property owners, but most of it is. And all that I've spoken to have been ready and willing to allow easements across their property and even assist in establishing a path that would get us to Green Cove Road. So this path does not go to the museum and it doesn't involve bridges. This is a roadside walkway, if you will, I believe. Yeah, Lee's
Yes.
nodding his head.
Yes, sir, that's correct. It's got a buffer zone from the edge of the pavement on the backside of the ditch. So there would be a designated shared use path is what we called it, 10 to 8 feet, depending on kind of what we're able to design for.
I'm good.
Mr. McKnight, are you have any plans to leave this county anytime soon?
No, sir.
That's a serious question.
No,
I'm
sir.
gonna get my biking trail this one.
I'm still working on it, Mr. Williams.
Okay, you're not on the special seat that pushes you up and out at this juncture?
No, sir. No.
Okay, that's very nice to hear, thank you.
Mr. Knight, I also would like to know, a lot of times when you all have these projects and you get this grant funding, will this increase our chance for further grant funding in the future, so you can complete this project, because it's a safety issue, as you know. And by doing that, I think, it'd be good to say, hey, we're going to get more funding as this gets rolling on. There's more funding coming after that would help out to complete it all the way down to Stingray Point.
That's a great point. And honestly, yes, I mean, it certainly won't hurt because now there's a destination, there's something to connect to, we're extending that. So absolutely, I think in the future it'll do nothing but help future applications. We're continuing this project along, connecting it with marinas or whatever, piers, whatever the county decides to kind of branch off from there. So it would do nothing but help.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Mr. Chair, I did have one more thought, and thank you, Wayne, for that question. I would also point out it's not just east of Stingray Point that we should be considering. We have issues with not enough traffic for our pedestrians and bikers throughout the county, as Reggie just alluded to. And as I found out recently on Wake Road, there's concern among our constituents throughout the community about a number of our roads. We're adding roundabouts and we're doing some traffic ease measurements at the pace of VDOT. But we have the luxury of being very much a vacation economy and a second home rental economy. And so we're not just looking east of Stingray Point. If we're really smart and looking to the future with more grant money coming from feds to do things like this, that ease traffic and that encourage pedestrians, biking, and strollers, maybe even horses in our community, because we have a horse faction in our community. We are ripe for trails, especially when there's millions of dollars coming from the federal government. And here's the headline: We have millions of dollars coming from the federal government, and we can go west as well as we can go east. There's demand up and down this county for this kind of trail project. So I consider this very much the beginning, and I thank Wayne for the question, and I thank Lee for the answer. And I echo Don's sentiment. Lee, if you get promoted, you have to have a succession plan where you have somebody equally or better to yourself, because you're going to be on this for a while if we do it right. Thank you.
You want a motion?
Please.
Y'all are making me blush, by the way.
I'll make the motion to approve item 2, which is revert to the original scope, increase project allocation of federal funds to $2.5 million.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Kuntz. Any further discussion? Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Thank you so much. Motion carries.
All right, next grenade. Okay, so how, would their representative like to present first, or would you like me to talk about?
I think that probably would be appropriate,
Okay.
because they have the request, and then we'll ask VDOT for their guidance. Thanks, Lee.
Mr. Earnhardt, welcome.
Welcome, thank you for letting me come up here. I'm Tim Earnhardt. Just a couple notes. I'm retired clergy, lived here for 9 years in Middlesex, 6 years in the HOA. I'm also the full-time building-based substitute teacher for Middlesex High School, so when you were talking about the Evolve machine and all that, I'm very familiar with that as well, and it's doing well. So I guess I should just say where we're at. One, I'd like to make note of those from our community that are here with me today and all. But I did send a letter, of course, on the 28th to Mr. Walker. The HOA was seeking that the county work with VDOT, of course, to present some type of letter, certificate, or whatever to and using whatever word, I'm not sure which is the best word. I know some people have said abandonment. Others have said discontinuance on that. We were looking to have something that states that there was no future plans to put a road back over the dam. As it has been said, of course, the DCR has come down upon the dam owner, which affects the ponds, which affects us and the HOA, who rightly had, I'm trying to think of the correct word to use here, the rights and privileges of both of the ponds to use and all that. And of course, most people bought their homes as being waterfront, knowing they'd be on the waterfront and all. And of course, now with the decision that we're now having to lower the water, and with the trying to figure out whether or not it's going to be able to be saved, it presents the problem of course, the values of the homes. So again, DCR came down, of course, sent a letter to Oscar Barber, the owner of the dam. We did have a meeting with the DCR as well. I want to make note, too, that the letter that we received and the letter I've sent to Mr. Oscar Barber that we had a copy of as well, I got a copy of as well. I don't have it on me, forgive me for that as well, stated that this was initiated because of a complaint. Of course, it wasn't stated who did the complaint. So our vice president of the HOA did some digging, and we discovered and were told that VDOT was the one who filed the complaint to the DCR. So is that our understanding is that this complaint has come from the DCR, and that's what started this whole process and the issue that we are at. Don't know why after 2000 and since 2005, why now this has come up, and especially if VDOT has a problem with this, why, why not? Why are we in here? Why are we here? So, Of course, at that particular meeting, Oscar Barber made it aware to the community and all of those who were at the meeting that he was not going to put any effort into fixing it due to the fact that when he bought the property, he didn't really, as he said, he didn't know that the dams were part of the purchasing that he did. That's from him. So, but he has stated that he would be willing to sell the property and sell the dam. He would like to actually give it away. He'd like the HOA to have it, but the HOA, of course, we are not able to purchase it or be involved in the aspects of it due to our own deeds and creeds of the HOA, because we cannot put our people in any situation that would possibly bring forth future financial problems for the HOA as a whole. But the community has come together, and a number of people, including what you heard from Jeff and Audra, who recently moved in and are trying to start a bed and breakfast there as well. A group of us have gotten together, and we're working with Mr. Barber and trying to come up with a solution in which a number of us would end up putting up funds in order to fix the dam. And basically what we're talking about at this moment, for what we know, is that we have to fix the spillway. The spillway is the major issue. But again, as stated, to do that, we have to have it classified as a low-risk dam. And DCR states that that can be done, but they have to have something from the county or from VDOT that says they're not going to put a road across. Because if a road's going to go across that in any way, shape, or form, then the standards for the repair of the dam are going to have to increase, which means the cost is going to be increased, which means those of us who are putting money in to try to fix this can't afford it. And if a road is going to be in the future for this, and I know we've been down, y'all been down this before, I wasn't here, but I've heard a lot of stuff about this. This thing could end up back in court again with the aspect of, okay, who owns what and who owns A, who owns B, and who's going to actually put money into this. And if VDOT's going to put a road across this now and we're going to grandfather this in or something, then, hey, VDOT, put your money in with it. Help us to fix this if you're going to do that. But the reality is most of the people in our community over there and in that area that we've talked to and we know really don't want that road back open. What we would like to see is to actually have it certified as a low-risk dam, be able then to come back as a community and as a HOA group, although again, we can't buy it, but yet we can help out. We would like to get the dam fixed, repaired, certified, and be able so that the HOA members themselves can drive their golf carts across of it, ride their lawnmower across of it to get to the other pond, ride their bikes, go across it without the worry of it ever being opened up with a road again. Right now, I live on this side. I live off of Burning Tree Road, so I'm on this side of the HOA. We're the smaller section of the HOA on Pond 1. Most of the HOA is on the other side. Now, because of the road, I can't go fishing Pond 2 without getting in my car, loading my boat up, driving all the way around the whole place, coming up by the golf carts, coming all the way back up to get to the pond. But if we can get it fixed and not have to worry about a road and have it so that we can actually like use a golf cart to get across, I could easily attach my boat to my golf cart, drive right across, hit the pond, which would be acceptable and helpful to me. As well as we have a community area which we were wanting to develop as well in our own HOA, and therefore it would be easy access for the HOA to be able to get back and forth between the two sections. Right now, we are, I hate to say, we're an HOA, but we're two really separate pieces because the roadway blocks our community, being a community. And we would like to bring that. We'd like to get that community back. So that is our request. We're looking to have something that we can give to the DCR. We did send a copy with Mr. Walker. You had your emails and all with Mr. Oscar Barber, and we sent that to the DCR as well. And they responded back and said, no, that's not what we need. that they need something in writing that states the road's not going to happen. Now, I'm not sure of the procedures on this at all. Part of what I understand, or I'm just going to make these statements here if I may, right or wrong, I'm just presenting it. It seems to me that either VDOT starts the process and sends a note to the county saying that the road status is discontinuance and the county approves it, or the county writes a note to VDOT saying they're not interested in opening the road and sends it to VDOT for them to issue a discontinuance. And if VDOT states the road is in discontinuance, I guess it's still got to require the county approval by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. I might not be right on that, but so at this point, we're sort of in limbo because we need somebody to act, and we don't, I myself don't know who needs to go first. But so we're asking for y'all to go first, I guess, in one way, to reach out to start this process, because what we've heard at the moment and from different people is that, and from Mr. Walker and his email to me and message to me, it doesn't sound like the county wants to put a road across it ever again. So if you're not, then give us a letter. Give us something we can give to DCR so that we, the people, the community, can put our own money. Again, none of the money's going to come from y'all. It's not, we're not asking money from the county or the state or whatever. We're trying to do this because we know the value of our properties there, and we love the area, we love the ponds, and we want to keep that waterfront. We want to keep those ponds so we can continue to fish and everything in there. So that's what we're seeking at the moment.
Mr. Chairman. I would like to say something. I was involved in it in 2005
Right.
when it was abandoned.
Oh, okay.
And then 2006 when we went to court. And court, the judge said the county doesn't own it. As you know, at that time, Gene Rourke owned it, owned the pond. That was back in 2006.
Okay.
So, and VDOT say, hey, we own the road, but we don't own anything underneath it. So that's why we abandoned it. And really, we couldn't do nothing. Our hands were tied. I mean, you know, at that time. So, and then I'm gonna just refer everything to my attorney, but and she can clarify everything, but I'm just letting you know, that's what happened back during that time.
Right.
And that's what happened. And, you know, our hands were tied. We went to court over it, you know, and said we would not exceed $5,000, I think I remember, was that, to find out who owned the dam and all of that. So, and that's what really happened back then. And it's VDOT, in my opinion, I'm no expert, but VDOT is the one you need to talk to. And they're the one, because we just abandoned it. And I think they say in another 100 years, a road may come through there. But, you know, so we just abandoned it at that time. And I'm just giving you a little bit of history on that.
Okay. So is there anywhere in a statement anywhere that states that the county abandoned it?
I talked about that.
So, yeah, so it was just for clarification, I think it's really important for the citizens. There are a lot of comments that have been made, and I've only pulled a small stack of a banker's box of legal files and documents. But the Attorney General's office was involved because originally the dispute was who owned the property. And the Attorney General's office, not this office or the judge, determined that Mr. Ruark did own it. So Mr. Barber owns it. And the county very passionately, through the records that I've read, really pushed hard because the same predicament came up. And unfortunately, we went to court, and my understanding from reading the case file is basically the judge said we had no standing, similar to you as the HOA. This was between Mr. Ruark at that time and VDOT. So now it's between Mr. Barber and VDOT. And so, but the records that from like the board meeting minutes and the documents that I have, and even from the document from the one that was written to Mr. Barber dated July 27th, 2023, I think you were referring to, where they tell you about the notice of unsafe condition and need for corrective action. If I may, the second sentence even says, VDOT advised that the road has been closed since 2005 due to the dam condition. And so the minutes that I've reviewed in anticipation of this, I think the county was acting under the idea that it had been closed, and that seemed to be the discussion. But it's clear that we need to do something different procedurally, and so I'm hoping VDOT can weigh in here, because we're at a little bit of a loss as well, because our records are showing that it has been closed or discontinued, but we must not be using the right words. So VDOT, I see Mr. McKnight nodding, so I think it would be helpful if he could guide us. But I think Mr. Jesse wanted to make sure that it was communicated that, like, this came up before, and the county very much so fought very hard. And unfortunately, just like the HOA, we got our hands smacked and said, you can't do anything.
You're not involved.
Yeah, you're not involved. So,
Right.
but I think Mr. McKnight can help us too. So I think we're all using the wrong words. There's a magic word, and we're going to find it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, again, because, abandonment and discontinuance and all this stuff that do. And of course, me not being here then at that time, not knowing how all that planned out, and all with that, but, so thank you, and appreciate that.
It was a good history lesson for myself, because I wasn't
Yeah.
here either, but I was reading. I mean, I was here in the county, but I wasn't in this position.
Right.
And I think the only thing, and that's very well said, the only thing I could add to it is, if my memory serves, and this was PM before Matt, the previous county administrator, but it's lore in the planning office about the whole process, because I was planning director back in 2008. The judge told both parties that while this county doesn't have standing, it's not a county issue, VDOT could sue to compel maintenance, or the property owner could sue to compel maintenance. And, well, the property owners that may be affected don't want to compel maintenance because they don't want the road back open. And then VDOT's kind of like, well, we're not going to push the issue, we'll just kind of leave it blocked and barricaded. And I think what's lacking is a formal declaration one way or the other, where we have to go through a formal process to, all right, we're not just going to barricade the road, we're actually going to abandon it. It's going to come off the state books. The right-of-way would revert back to previous property owners if any exist. It's old Bird Act Road, I believe. Any of that. Good segue for our star of the day, Lee McKnight.
That's what we're looking. We are looking for an easy solution.
So really quick, officially, VDOT never complained to DCR. I just want to put that out there. But yes, so it is a terminology thing. The road was never abandoned. So it was closed, which there's an important distinction. And as Mr. Walker alluded to, this road was a prescriptive easement, and that's really, really important as part of the Bird Act. A prescriptive easement, VDOT took over the roads in the 1930s from the counties with the right to maintain the roads. They don't own the land underneath the roads, and that's really important. Nowadays, any times that you have a project, we call it fee simple right-of-way, where the state will actually purchase the land underneath the road. But that's it's an important distinction, but that's a Bird Act thing from the 1930s. So there are two options that the county does have in this particular case, just hearing what the citizens have said. So there's an abandonment, which is the first option, and just to give you some idea of when this option is appropriate, the Board of Supervisors decides that there's no public necessity that exists for the continuance of the secondary road as a public road, and the examples that are given are lack of public use. Obviously, in this case, this road has not been used since at least 2005 because it's been closed. The other option is the safety and welfare of the public would be served best by abandoning that section of the road. And when I say abandon, I'm not talking abandoning the entire stretch of Stormont Road, just the current stretch that's closed from that barricade to barricade, just to avoid confusion. So with an abandonment, this requires the Board of Supervisors in that county to announce its intent to abandon a road, including providing formal notice to the commissioner and posting of a willingness notice to hold a public hearing. And this is by the Code of Virginia, and I can give you that reference if you'd like, Heather. Okay. Following a public hearing, assuming one is requested, and held, the Board of Supervisors acts to either dismiss the abandonment or to abandon the road with a prescribed time frame. This road has a prescriptive easement, as we mentioned, which is easier in this particular case. So the abandonment of the road extinguishes that prescriptive easement, and the road ceases to be a public road and that land is still who owns it today. The easement goes away completely, though. The second option is what's known as a discontinuance. A discontinuance essentially terminates VDOT's maintenance responsibility and jurisdiction for a road. The road would remain open for public use. Now, that's up to the county to determine what that public use is, I'll say, but it would no longer be within VDOT's maintenance jurisdiction or responsibility. The basis for a discontinuance is that the road is no longer provides a public service, warranting its maintenance at public expense. The process for a discontinuance is a little bit different than an abandonment. The department or the Commonwealth Transportation Board may, in response to a petition of the local governing body, the Board of Supervisors in this case, initiate the discontinuance of a secondary road. VDOT would issue a public notice of intent to discontinue maintenance and post a willingness and then hold a public hearing if one is requested. So the difference there being is that the right-of-way would remain open for public use, but it would no longer be a VDOT-maintained road. Whereas with an abandonment, all easements, they're gone, it's no longer open for public use, and the right-of-way everything reverts back to the property owner.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a point of clarification?
Sure.
Please? Lee, with the discontinuance, though, if VDOT is no longer in charge of maintenance, wouldn't that revert then to county maintenance?
It would.
Exactly. That would put it then a county-owned
It would.
road in our maintenance. And
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to take another turn of the crank on that one. So you explained abandonment versus discontinuance. To what extent would the county be required logically to do maintenance in either case?
Lee, correct me if I'm wrong. Abandonment, none, because it's no longer state, county, or us. If you do it's private property.
Yeah.
Discontinuance, you're fully on the hook. VDOT's out. Right? Am I saying that?
Correct.
Yeah. When to be direct.
A question for Lee, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Is there a scenario, Lee, where abandonment, discontinuance, or other leads to the transition, as alluded to by the homeowner, and I think multiple homeowners, there's a desire of a faction in that community to use this as a walking trail, or a biking trail, or a fishing trail? This ties into the $2.5 million of federal money that we just agreed to. There is demand for this sort of trail, but on the other hand, the elephant in the room is there's significant demand as well to have this road brought back to life. And both of those factions need to be heard before the county can really make a decision. But what I'm not hearing in so far the two options of abandonment and discontinuance is what I need to hear, which is if we do enable a solution or facilitate or catalyze a solution, at least facilitate conversations between VDOT and these stranded homeowners, we have to consider, now that the water is being drained and the dam is being revealed, if they come up with a solution, what is the county's involvement? And we should already have a sense for that now that the thing is draining, because this decision is upon us. And so what I really recommend, Lee, I think we need to have you here at least monthly until either through committees or meetings or town halls, we get the sense that we need from all the impacted constituents, both in Reggie's district and mine and throughout the community, and the businesses, because the businesses, in particular the golf course, have been very clear. They would love to have that road open again as it was when they established the first and only golf course that's been thriving in this environment. So all that to say, I want to know if the option that what we're hearing from some of the public today is available to discontinue or abandon, but allow for a public walking path for the length of that section of discontinued or abandoned Haley's Mill Stormont Road. To me, that's a wonderful section that may help us link long-term a longer path through the community. And if we do not, it is still already a place that is enjoyed by many, including myself, as a running destination, and we should encourage that kind of public usage that preserves the homeowner's ability to do what they want with their property, including enjoying what looks like a healthy pond. So there's a lot of history here, and many of us are aware of parts of it, and we've all recited the facts that we've heard, but I really believe that we've given it 18 years, and the homeowners in this area are our constituents, and the county does have a role, even if the state has ruled that we do not. And what I mean by that is we should facilitate or catalyze or introduce meetings with VDOT, because VDOT's going to be involved. We know that. Lee is good at this sort of thing. He understands the outcomes and the choices. But I think our role here right now is to get these groups together, get them talking, get them understanding why some want it open, some want it closed, find out what the majority wants, and step through these decisions, and then the county can react to the options available. But right now, you know, we could choose some of these options that Lee has laid out for us. We could do that in 2-3 months, but without knowing what the public actually believes. And that belief has evolved, I've seen in the 6 years I've served and the 10 years I've lived here. We have new owners. They have new desires. They're moving in for different reasons. There's a lot of reasons to get more public feedback. We should be soliciting more public feedback, and then we should be prepared to move as quickly as the public is ready to move once they recognize each other as opposing factions on this issue. And they may find it's 80-20, and they may find it's 55-45. And we'll stand ready to see how they resolve those kinds of challenges, because that's what it's all about. So I really think it's about near term getting public comment and VDOT staying closely engaged so that we have good information from the source and we're not trafficking in stories and ideas and history telling that isn't necessarily factual.
Thank you, John. Can I further clarify my former question when I asked about maintenance in one case versus the other? The maintenance would only extend to the roadway.
Correct.
Not to the land underneath, correct?
It would remain, yeah.
So if the county were to accept that it would need to maintain what VDOT has discontinued, we're only talking about the road surface.
Yes, sir.
No obligation for the dam. And do you think that is correct, Council?
I would be uncomfortable making that type of statement without a thorough research of that. And I would just state that maintenance of a road is maintenance of a road. And snow removal, ice removal, maintaining it in a standard condition for...
Because it's discontinued as a road, I would say that snow removal is not required, but these are fine points. I'm just trying to make sure that in either case, the obligation for the land underneath, for the dam itself, would not be construed as a county obligation.
I will take our attorney off the hook and be comfortable in saying what you have is an attorney general's ruling that the property owner owns the dam. That is not a court ruling. That is an opinion of an attorney. Now, he's the attorney general. Okay, but it's only an opinion. And that's one of the reasons I think the county tried to bring the suit to compel maintenance and establish ownership. We just didn't have standing. The people who have standing chose not to do so. So it's just an opinion of that. And I would highly recommend the county, before accepting any maintenance responsibility of just the roadway, like VDOT has, I'd want a ruling in court saying that's the case, and more than an attorney general's opinion. That's just my opinion and my recommendation.
So if that were the case and the county were to choose abandonment by saying there is no public necessity, then VDOT's easement goes away, the road remains the property of the property owner?
Correct, it'd be private property.
Okay, gotcha.
And to Mr. Kuntz's point, just to clarify something, either option, it has to have public involvement. So that at minimum, there needs to be a willingness. In this case, there likely will be a public hearing if I had to guess. So there will be a lot of public involvement with either option, just to clarify.
Yeah, and Lee, all I'm saying, Lee, on that real quick is the public is driving this for a change. Often, we are reading the tea leaves and trying to determine what they want to do beyond keep our taxes low. In this case, the public has been speaking about this, and they're starting to gather a voice, and there are definitely a couple distinct voices. So my point, Lee, isn't that the public would not be involved in the normal protocols that they are. I'm actually saying they're calling for us to take action, and we need to respond by either forming a committee or start having town halls and aggregating this public will into a decision. The decisions for us become easy when we know what the public wants. We're hearing one side, I've heard the other side. We now need to figure out, the hard work of this is either to find out what the whole population over there wants and then make a determination, or to go out there and risk misgauging it. And I think the right way to do this is really, and I'll help spearhead it. Reggie, if you're interested, maybe the two of us do it since both of our districts are impacted. But what I'm advocating for is that we actually go out into the community and get their opinion and give them very clear opportunity to speak on this so that it doesn't go another 18 years. And I don't think the county necessarily has a role except to protect our risk and our exposure to things like maintenance as we're discussing. But all of this is moot until we understand what the community wants. And for us to go and find out what the community wants, I think we're acting appropriately now and discussing a little bit what all of this means. So that when we go to the community, hopefully arm in arm with VDOT, hopefully arm in arm with Mr. Barber and any other relevant landowner that's involved, we should be able to lay it out on the table for everybody and say, here are the options, just as Lee tried to do here from a VDOT perspective. But, I think we're going to kick the can down the road if we don't go out and actively pursue public engagement, and I'm actually volunteering myself to do that as long as I have VDOT at my side and the blessing of the board. And the idea is this is supposed to get us more information to make the decision while we get more information about what the decision is, if that makes sense.
I got a couple of things, Lee. When you say close the roads, are we talking from 33 all the way back to 33, or are we just talking the section that the dam has?
Just the section over the dam, where it's currently closed to, from barricade to barricade.
So when we get tied into what the maintenance going to do is all the county going to do, we're only talking about 1/16 of a mile. So we're not talking about the whole road. I'm just trying to make sure I understand that part of it. And the other thing, with the landowners and all of that, I thought that they want to save their land values. So they don't want the pond to go in the direction that it's going. And it should be some type of simple solution. For information wise, the dam, at one time, because I've been in the county all my life, I remember when it was a gravel road down, you go down and watch your cars, when they had the little dam lower down. Just get information for the ones that have bored within the last 10 or 15 years. See, and what happened is, it's something like buying a piece of land that's out in the desert. You don't look at it no more than on the internet. You get there, you find out what you got, you did not do any research. Now, we as county officials, we're gonna make it right, because sometimes you get false information and we buy things. We talking about, two dams, the dam upstream and the dam downstream and all that. But at the end of the day, we still represent you all and try to make it right. And I think I know what y'all want. And my question is to Lee. Are we saying that you want the county to release, to change the classification of the dam so it can be fixed at no expense to the county?
I'm simply presenting two options that the county can consider that that may or may not assist the residents in their quest to upgrade the dam.
You saying upgrade the dam? What I'm saying is to keep water in the pond and keep them up, because all of it is ponds except the one right by Starmount Road. The rest of them are ponds. You do other hole and put water in. I got that in coefficient, but I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about, if the county vote to abandonment or something like that, or whatever you call it, I'm not getting tired of it to the road part, because I'm thinking about keeping water in the ponds and in the dams within it. That's what I'm thinking about. So VDOT brought two proposals to us, and they're not that great. So what I'm saying, at the end of the day, the landowners want water in the ponds that they have there, for their land value. Now, we gotta come to some type of conclusion of how we can make that happen without making it complicated. So what I thought that the dam classification would change. Somebody might let me know if the county agreed to say something about the classification of the land, and that will release the county of all obligations. And then the homeowners, whoever owned it, can go through grants to fix whatever they need to fix.
Reggie, maybe I can take another turn here. So the road is our discussion point with VDOT. The road, just think of it as totally separate from the dam. VDOT, either we want the road to be returned to vehicular capability or not. If we want it returned to be able to carry vehicles, then somebody's got to bring the dams up to a standard that nobody's willing to pay for. And there's nobody here advocating that the road be restored for vehicular traffic, although I have heard that there are constituents who wish that it would be. However, there's nobody to pay for it, and it's a big deal. So we're either going to abandon the road or discontinue the road if the residents are going to be successful at having it downgraded to a low-risk dam, which would allow them to affordably raise the level of the water so that it preserves their quality of life, their home values, and our tax revenue stream.
Yes.
So,
And I don't want to speak for the HOA, but I think the issue right now is that there is currently a road over this dam, and DCR will not lower that classification until that road is no longer a road or it's abandoned. I don't want to put words.
That's correct, that's correct.
right, so before we could do that, we'd have to have a public hearing to get public input, and if there was a large advocacy for restoring the road to vehicular traffic, then we would hear from them, and presumably they would tell us how they were going to pay for it. But barring that happening, what we'll do is get the public input that you asked for, John, it seems to me, without having to do much outside of a normal process, which is a public hearing. So this is just, I'm just sharing my understanding of the situation. It doesn't seem that complicated to me. I do know that the state, in 2008, severely increased the requirements for private dams, and they only began enforcing it recently. And it has created a huge problem because it's just not even cost-effective to accomplish what the state is asking people to do. But that's the situation we have. It seems to me the residents have come up with a pretty good solution here, and we just need to go through our public hearing process and determine which way we would like to go. And that's my assessment of the situation, and I ask everybody, tell me where I'm wrong.
No,
move this ahead.
Mr. Chair, you're definitely right, and like I say, these citizens on this pond of the dam, it's going to affect them the most. So, and they come toward us to answer these questions, and they got a lot more information now to which direction we need to go from VDOT and the county. And all I can say is just the homeowners association, just get yourself together, prove your case, and then, and we will do what's best for Middlesex County. That's all we can do.
Glenn, I think you and Wayne just encapsulated it better than I did. I think you've got it right, and I take back everything except for I do hear those other sides that are saying they want a road. But I would say to them, as we're saying to those that are here today advocating for less than a road, during this public comment period, come forward and make it easy for us to make a decision. Let us know your piece, on all sides. But I think Bud and Wayne, you've got it exactly right.
I have just a couple questions, Mr. McKnight. First question is, to have this low hazard classification per the DCR, in both of the examples you gave, abandonment and discontinued of the road, maybe you can help me out on either one of those two or both. If at some point, because I think the letter that came in to the county, one of the words that bothered me was, we're asking the county and VDOT to agree that the road remains closed in perpetuity. That word has a problem. In only this, there may be down that road, either side, at some point, that more development occurs. And if that occurs, then where does that fall with whether or not we need the road reopened and everything that has to go for that? If the county decides to go with the abandonment issue or the discontinued issue on the road, how difficult is it then to come back if somewhere in the future, I don't know when that is or if it ever will come about, but if we wanted at some point for that road to be reopened, what are the difficulties with both of those designations?
So again, the abandonment option, that is abandoning all public use of that right-of-way. It's private property. So any future project that may or may not go through that area would have to purchase that right-of-way because it is private property at that point. With a discontinuance, again, the road is still open for public use, and I use the term road. It could be whatever, I'm not going to go down that road, but the area, the land is still open for public use. So in the event that, in your example, if there was a desire to reopen the road or connect it, it would be more of just upgrading to current state standards, VDOT state standards, that area, that road, and then bringing it back into the state system.
That's on the discontinued part of that, which we've already talked about, presents a potential issue with the county of maintenance of the road top, correct?
Correct. Now, I will say, because, and maybe this is something that Heather and I need to discuss, but because it's currently a prescriptive easement, that does complicate things. And in the future, I can just say, with any future projects, VDOT is trying to turn that prescriptive easement into a fee simple easement and purchase the property. So in any event, either way, if it was a VDOT project, we'll still probably have to purchase the property to turn that prescriptive easement into fee simple. So just to throw that out there. It does complicate a lot of things with that prescriptive easement.
And this may be just a fine caveat to a point you just made there. When we've looked at this issue as it's arose in the past, VDOT's position has been we don't build roads on dams anymore. We would want to build a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's shifted or changed, so it wouldn't be so much rebuilding the dam even if VDOT owned it.
Right. Yeah. In general, VDOT's mission is to get cars from one side of that crossing to the other, and that's really what our mission is, safely as possible. There's other examples of this within our own residency with like Gloucester County, 602 Burke Mill Pond. That has a dam that is owned by a private entity, and we built a bridge over the crossing. The dam is maintained by the private entity. The bridge is maintained by VDOT. So there is examples of that within our own residency.
So do we need more fact-finding or discussion, or can we have a motion that we would like to begin I don't think that we even need a motion, maybe. What we need to do is determine whether we would seek to abandon or to discontinue as a classification and hold the appropriate public hearings. It seems to me abandonment is the one that is, has the fewest potential liabilities from the county standpoint. Doesn't seem that either one matters from the resident standpoint. Is the outcome the same? No.
I just had a clarification,
But can we get clarity as to whether we need a motion or what? Because I'm ready to make a motion along the lines that you're suggesting, with the exception that I think there is a difference between the two, but I do think we need to move forward.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say something. I think we need to just kind of table it and get some more information
Okay.
from, get more research on this. I mean, because, you make one decision, and then we don't know if the landowners, around there are comfortable with the decision that we're going to make. So I think if we can table it and come back next month,
Yeah.
that way we can get more information
That
and
makes
can
sense.
communicate to the citizens, and then that way it can make us, let us decide a better decision and say, hey, let's put abandonment on it, or let's do discontinue. I think it should be collected between both parties, and then we can get more information, and that's just my
I think
opinion.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad Wayne said that, because I think it's a wise approach. And what I've heard, I think, between the lines, and somewhat even directly from John and Reggie, is maybe they would like to have a town hall style informal meeting, a parallel to the process. VDOT's there, county staff's there, just to solicit that input from the property owners that may not be here tonight, that may have the other point of view, so they could get some consensus of thought on the matter between now and maybe next month. If that, I don't want to speak for Reggie or
That
John,
sounds
but
good. So
that's what I was
let's table it
hearing.
until next month and do the rest of the homework.
So is there a consensus for the board for staff, meaning myself, Mr. Walker, and Mr. Kretz, to follow through with Mr. McKnight to research this so we can kind of flesh out some of these possibilities
Yeah.
with what does it mean by discontinued and maintenance? Is that the consensus of the board, just so staff has some clear-cut directives?
John and Reggie, you need to weigh in.
Yes. Yes, for me, I would just add that I'm really interested in which of the two options better preserves the option of a public path, a public multi-use path. That's what is, I think, the best solution. And if one of those slightly favors that, then I want to know about that, if that makes sense. But yes, otherwise, Heather.
Thank you, John.
I think meetings are good. And Starman Road is a beautiful place to walk and to run. And I'm hearing from most of the constituents is they don't want the pond to go dry, and they don't want to change the land values. And I think if we stay focused on that, and I still think the answer is kind of simple. It's just those small words that everybody's putting in there and make it difficult. And so I'm for, give us a little bit more time so I can talk to more constituents, but I know how, on one side of the dam, I know how they feel. A lot of constituents saying that, I'm glad the road is like what it is, it's been close to 20 years. So anybody who's staying on that need a safety factor, have learned a way to get out. We buy property down in an eighth of a mile or less than a quarter of a mile that we turn and get back out. So safety is not, business-wise, yes, we have a golf course down there, but they've been operating for at least the last 15 years and seem like to me they're doing pretty well. So we gotta think about constituents, and I'll go back and say again that we're gonna do the right thing. We're gonna get together, we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna really try to do the right thing. So town hall meeting, we fine with me, we get with our administration and make sure we keeping it simple. And I think we can come up with a good resolution.
Mr. Chair, I would like to also say, Mr. Earnhardt, y'all, DCR, I mean, it's not gonna hold y'all back on anything for tabling in a month, will it?
At this point, I don't think so, but they are, they have set up a timeline on us accomplishing certain things all the way through for the process. I think as long as we are continuing to show that we are trying to move forward and accomplish these things, that they will continue to work with us. Of course, from the HOA standpoint, our big issue is the fact of time for two reasons, and one being that, you know, we want to repair that spillway before it breaks on its own.
Right.
Because even now, the DCR with the gates, we have 4 gates, and originally they wanted us to raise all the gates, and when they came back and inspected, they only let us raise one. And now they've allowed us to raise another one a little bit, and I don't know if they're going to let us touch the rest of them.
Right.
So the state of it is even important, because if it does break down, then that's going to be additional cost.
Yeah,
But we were willing to work through this. My only question was, if we have a public forum, would that be something that happens before the next meeting? Okay.
Don, you okay to table?
Absolutely. I think that needs to be, you know, I'm just the type of guy that don't like to make the decision unless I have all of the information, and I think, thank y'all for coming in today and voicing your opinion on that. I think we seem to have a clear understanding of what the next steps need to be taken to do that, and I think there's some legal questions that need to be answered as well, and I think there's some conversation between Mr. McKnight and the county, but we will do our due diligence, and thanks for being here and supporting your position.
Thank you.
And Tim, specifically answering your question, we'll get with Reggie and Don and Lee and see if they want to have that town hall meeting before the next meeting on October 3rd. And we'll try to have it in a place near to all of the neighbors down there, so it's in a little bit more neutral environment, I guess. All right, very good.
Thank you all. All right. Next is the social services, which is report only, pages 48 through 49 in your packet. And then next is Superintendent Tim Doss from the Middlesex Peninsula Regional Jail.
Good
How are you
evening.
today?
Good evening, board members. How's everybody today? I guess I'm here to give the board an update on the current situation that we've been experiencing. Mr. Kuntz is on our jail authority board. First of all, I'm the superintendent of the regional jail, which is right next door. As of today, we have 128 inmates. Our inmate population has been down ever since COVID. Actually since COVID, and I'm sure a lot of business owners, but however, a lot of people have left already. But I think everybody's experiencing difficulties in hiring. And I know the sheriff in Middlesex, and actually every law enforcement agency, runs into difficulties, especially here lately. And there's a lot of factors. I think one of the most important factors is the generation that we're looking at to hire. It's not the same as when I first started in law enforcement, so there's a different work ethic. I don't mean anything negative by that, but you hire somebody today, and for $1,000 more in pay, they'll drive 45 minutes to get that. So it's different. It's a different generation that we're hiring. So what brought me here today is we've experienced a significant difficulty in hiring staff. We currently have 8 openings. We had a special meeting with the board, with the jail authority on April, April, I apologize, August 26th, I believe is what the date was. Because to me, I presented to the board that we were at a catastrophic position with that, with liability for the inmates and then liability to staff. We've been posting ads in the paper for 18 months continuously. We first experienced this with our nursing staff. We have a full medical department. We have 6 LPN nurses. So we were, actually at that time, we had 7 positions, and we only had 4 nurses on staff. So what we've experienced over the last 4 years is we've needed to compete as everybody else is, and I'm sure you all are very familiar with that, with your sheriff's office here and your county staff, and I'm sure with social services and court staff. What happens is one jurisdiction will raise the salary, then the next jurisdiction will raise the salary,
the next one will raise it, and then when it gets back to the original jurisdiction, then you're way behind the 8 ball. So then the people that you have start leaving and going to these other places. So I'm here to explain what the jail authority has done and how that will impact next year's budget request. So in the April 26th meeting, I requested the jail authority increase of $5,000, increase the salary to all sworn positions by $5,000. That took our starting salary to $49,000 non-certified, $52,000 certified. So we have 10 officers per shift. You've seen me get up and walk out a couple of times during this meeting. Those are phone calls from the office. We have to, hopefully he's there now, but we had to transport an inmate to the emergency room. When we transport an inmate to the emergency room, we have to send 2 officers with them. That is a Riverside Hospital policy. So to give you an example of how that impacts us, I have I've set a limit of no less than 6 officers working in the facility because there are 7 posts. We can shut 1 post down, but we still have 6 posts that we have to man in order to do our half-hour checks. 4 weeks ago, I apologize, we had 4 mental health patients that had to be temporary, had to be TDO, what we refer to as TDO, temporary detention orders. All 4 at the same time, which is extremely rare. So at that time, we were 11 officers down. So if we have a staff of 40 officers that work in security, each shift has 10. When you're already down 11, so now you're down to the new number, which you're extremely short. And then with FMLA and vacations, and then when we had 4, I sent my captains, my majors, my lieutenants. We used everybody we possibly could because we had to send all 4 inmates to the hospital at one time to be medically cleared for the TDO. So we had to send 8 officers at Riverside Hospital, and we did request that they not, that we send 4 instead of 8, but they wouldn't let us bring them there without that. So it's very important, I think, for all the member jurisdictions, which we have 5 member jurisdictions, here to realize how significant that impacts us when we're that short-staffed. I had an officer assaulted in the booking area 2 months ago that was assaulted by a mental health patient. He missed 32 days of work from his injuries. So it's just a balancing act, if you will. We have to provide the staff for staff to be safe, and our job is to keep the inmate population safe. So when we're that short, we end up locking the whole facility down. And when we lock the whole facility down, the normal person may think that that's easier, because then you just walk by and look in the window. Well, it's not, because that increases our observation that our officers have to make sure that they watch, because when an inmate is locked down in a confined space for any period of time, any extended period of time, they become suicidal very quickly, unfortunately. And we have a great staff. We have a great jail authority. We have a wonderful staff. So I'm here to just explain why there'll be a difference. I'm confident, unfortunately, that there'll be a difference in next year's budget request. Last year, or actually it wasn't last year, it was in, I think, May of this year, we had already approved, or the jail authority had already approved our FY24 budget. And I had been explaining to the board for several months that our nursing staff was down. So it's not just security. So I think it was the May, Mr. Cooch, I know he's on by Zoom, he may be able to, I didn't bring the exact date, but I requested an additional $10,000 for the nurses' salaries. I come up with those salaries because I do a job analysis or salary analysis to see where the average salary is in the state of Virginia. And also, when we were down to 4 nurses, and we were at 4 nurses for probably 8 months, 7 months, which is very, very critical for our facility, because if one of the nurses are sick, then we don't have coverage. We don't have any medical in the facility. Our nurses pass out the medications, they take the blood sugars and all of those things, that nature. We used to contract temporary nurses. I used to be able to get a temporary nurse in Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. It did not include overtime. Could be night shift for $25 an hour.
which was not bad. I mean, it was pretty much what the nurses were making at that time. Since COVID, it's nowhere near that. So if I called today to get a nurse, an LPN, not an RN, if I needed a nurse for a year today, it would cost us a minimum of $260,000 for one nurse.
Of what?
$260,000 to get one LPN nurse for a year on a temporary basis, through a temp agency. The salaries are astronomical. When I did a salary analysis for an LPN, the salary average for the state of Virginia is $68,000 to $80,000 for an LPN. That used to be the very high end of an RN. An RN, a brand new RN out of school that's just passed her license, is making six figures. Riverside Hospital is paying traveling nurses two RNs, $240 an hour. $240 an hour. So that's what we're competing up against. So we raised, the board graciously approved, raised our LPN salary to $70,000. And immediately we hired a nurse. Immediately. They also added a med tech, two med techs, to help pass medications out to try to alleviate some of the nursing tasks. So I say all of this to try to explain where we're at. We continually try to do everything we can to keep our budget low. We're very physically responsible, if you will. We are holding prisoners from other regional jails, trying to bring in some additional revenue, but everybody in the state is low. I think they're out of the 22 regional jails, I believe it's 68 sheriff's office ran jails. There's only 3 that I know of that are overcrowded. Everybody else is undercrowded. New River Valley on the other side of Roanoke normally has 1,400 inmates. They have about 625 right now. So what makes it more difficult, but your buildings are laid out for bigger populations. So and when you have to do classification and things like that, but there's only so much that we can do. But I know I'm bouncing all over the road with this, but I wanted to give you basically a heads up. In the sheriff's office, you're going to run into the exact same thing. And it's difficult because when a board member like yourselves, you may go home and say, well, I'm going to look up the sheriff's office. What does the jurisdiction next door say about salaries? So that you go on their website and look at their salaries. Those are not accurate. I can assure you they are not accurate. And I'll give you an example. When I called the superintendent when I was doing a salary analysis for my request to the jail authority, and I asked the superintendent, I said, how much do you pay your officers? What do you start a brand new officer at? And he said, a comp board minimum, which is $42,000. I said, there's no way. And he said, well, they really make about 50, a little more than 50. He said, well, we separate their holiday pay. We don't count that when we list it. So that's deceiving when I go to compare what we pay and what they pay. Western Tidewater Regional in Suffolk, when you go to their website, it says $47,000 starting pay for an officer plus a $4,000 bonus. Well, they now include that $4,000 bonus into their starting salary, so their starting salary is $51,000. When I called the sheriff next door of Gloucester and asked him, they started non-certified at 49, a certified between 51 and 52. And if they have any experience, he tries to start them at a deputy 2. They have a salary scale, which is more than $52,000. But when you go to the website, it's a lot lower. So I'm just giving you this heads up, just for some information about. I'm sure the sheriff would at some point, if he's not already, I'm sure he has. Every sheriff has to do it in every jurisdiction because of you're competing with higher salaries. There are some jurisdictions that are fortunate and have revenue. And I don't believe in, I think a friend of mine that used to be a county administrator used to say, we can't compete with the Joneses. That's the old saying that I always remember from years ago. And I'm not asking that or not indicating that at all. I'm just saying that it costs you more when you lose somebody to bring somebody in than it does to pay a little bit more to keep the one that you have. The impact to the next year's budget request, I can't give you that exact figure, but what I can tell you is as of today, we're $500,000 in the hole before we start preparing the budget. I don't anticipate it being anywhere near that, because like I said, we work very, very hard. We have a great staff and jail authority, and we've worked very hard over the last, I've been there since 2010, so a little over 13 years, and we've worked very hard to build a solid financial foundation. So we have enough funds already to pay for our 5-year CIP program, and so we do everything we possibly can to keep taxes reduced. I would be more than glad to give anybody a tour. On a side note, outside of the salaries, we're very proud of our facility. There are a lot of issues at the state level that I'd be more than glad to go over at some point with everybody at some point, just so you're up to date and up to speed, because they could financially impact the budgets catastrophically. One, and what I refer to that is we call it MAT, which is medically assisted treatment. And I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, but they want to treat opioid and heroin addicts like diabetics. So they no longer want to focus on rehabilitation and substance abuse. They want to give them a shot or a pill monthly for the rest of their life, which will keep them at a high. The problem with that is right now the cheapest pill or shot for that is $1,400 a month per person, per inmate. So as of today, if an inmate comes in on one of those medications, we have to continue giving it to them. What they're trying to implement now is that we have to sit down with every inmate and say, have you ever used narcotics? Do you want this? And if they say yes, then we have to give it to them. So out of 121 inmates, if I had 70 of those inmates say they wanted that, then you times 70 times $1,400 a month for just that one medication, and the state is indicating that they're going to pay for it out of opioid money. Well, when you look at how the opioid breakdown of what the state, God, I don't even know what the total figure is. I'm sure it's huge. But by the time you get all the way down to where we would even be available to get that little piece, we might get it for 6 months, if we're fortunate enough to get it that long. So then what happens with that is then it reverts to the responsibility of the localities. And that'll be statewide. So we're actively looking at all of these things, actively trying to be precautionary, if you will. So I wanted to give the board a heads up. Mr. Koontz asked me to come and brief the board on why we did that. So when you see the budget request next year and you see the increase, then you'll understand why. And I know that the board members are, you're elected and you have to answer to your constituents. So when a constituent comes to you and asks you why, I would encourage you, one, ask them to come see me. I'd be more than glad to sit down with them at the facility. I can tell you that it would be significantly increase your cost if you had your own facility. Significantly. If you built a jail today, just for the building, it's an average cost of about $285,000 per cell. So it's outrageous. It's outrageous. It's not counting the land. It's not counting the operating cost. I mean, Gloucester Sheriff's Office, I worked for Gloucester for 21 years. I'm in my 37th year. So when I stopped working the road there and went to the jail there, the budget was about $2.1 million for the operating costs just of that jail. And that jail is certified to hold 60 inmates. So if when a facility builds a new jail at the state, you have to have 2 surveys done, or I call them analysis, but they have technical names. It costs you about $185,000 for them, but basically all it does is project out what the state feels your average daily population will be 18 years out, and that's the number that you have to build your facility to, or they won't certify it. The state used to give you 50% match, and now I believe it's 25. There may be a moratorium on that where you can't even get that. So my point is it's significantly cheaper, unfortunately, even though it is expensive, it is significantly cheaper. So I believe you guys pay average, I think you're estimated, for 2023, the Middlesex was at basically 1.1 million. So if you built a jail, not even considering your construction costs, or however you financed that or paid for it outright, or however you did that, your operating costs would at minimum be $3 to $4 million a year. So, any questions? I know I've just given you some great news, but I mean, I think it's good, and I think it was good for Mr. Coos to ask me to inform you, because I don't want you to be shocked the budget year and you see, you know, you guys usually pay, I think it's about 20.4% on 1 year, 23. It's based on how many inmates you have in the facility. So, yes, sir.
What are the other counties that are involved with the regional jail?
Oh, I apologize.
Or so, whatever the word buzzword
It's the member jurisdictions, yes, sir. It's Middlesex, Matthews, Essex, King, Queen, King, William. Yes, sir. We used to have almost 300 inmates, but since COVID and then pre-trial and things, people get out. They're usually out unless they have a significant charge.
And King William is part of that too?
It is, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what is our percentage of the budget with the other members?
Well, so let me explain how we formulate that. So when we present the budget, when I present the budget to the jail authority and the jail authority approves it, our figure that we give each jurisdiction, and Matt can tell you, we've talked many times about this, is an estimate, because it's a moving number. And what I mean by that is for, say, the first quarter of the billing cycle for that budget year, we go back 2 cycles. So we go back 6 months ago, and we basically, if it's $1 million, just using round numbers, say $1 million is that quarter, then we'll look at Middlesex, of that 100% population, you might have had 20.4 or 21.3 of the population at that time. So then you would be responsible for 21.3 of that. So then the next billing cycle, next quarter that we bill, we go back to, and we look at it that and break it down. So we do it the best we can. We always recommend, and Matt will tell you, to go back 3 to 5 years, and it'll give it usually fairly consistent. One of the drawbacks to that is if you do get a good year and you're low, don't cut the very next year. Use the average, because I had the problem, I didn't have a problem, but it was a difficult time for Essex. When Essex was $180,000 short at the end of 1 year, and then King William was almost $300,000. That's because they had a really good year, their inmate population was down, and a lot of times, you know, your inmate population may go down, and you're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to save some money, but the other jurisdictions also go down, so your percentage number stays the same. But for those 2 years, for those 2 jurisdictions, everybody was up and theirs went down, so they had a great year for their jurisdiction, so they estimated that same amount the next year. Well, then the inmate population went back up for that jurisdiction, so the cost did too. Hope that answers that.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could elaborate briefly, we've discussed this in some of the budget work sessions we've had in the past. If we've seen a dramatic decrease in the jail budget, we will use that average. We won't take, or we won't recognize 100% of that decrease for the very reasons Tim just said, because we want to make sure we're insulated from some of those swings. And there's one aspect of being the host county of our regional jail. We benefit from all the jobs. We benefit from having wonderful people working in our community. But if there's an incident at the jail that causes that inmate to be sentenced, I guess, and they're tried here in Middlesex, well, then they become our inmate.
They become the Middlesex inmate.
Right.
And I think if I didn't answer your questions, this might be a little better, sir, is that for FY23, at the end of the year, Middlesex had paid $1.141,442, $1.1 million, which out of $4.4 million was the approved budget for the membership localities. So the percentage for Middlesex of that was 25.9. If that helps, yes, sir.
It does, thank you.
Okay, sir, yes, sir. Can I answer any other questions?
And I assume you're having this conversation with the other members as well.
I've had the conversation with all of our board members, and if they request, I go to the jurisdictions. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
great.
I apologize.
If I might add, Don, I think Middlesex has a unique opportunity here. to really offer some leadership. This board that I've been on now for 5 or 6 years is largely comprised of sheriffs. And the sheriffs, because they have to come to the same county boards and ask for their deputies who are also below where they need to be and have been, despite our best efforts. I'm not laying blame at anyone's feet. But their sheriffs are reluctant to raise the salaries in our jails because then they have to come back to the county as well. And so this has been percolating for the jail in our county, in our region, for years, as Tim has alluded to. And Tim has done amazing things that he's sort of quietly explained, but what he's done to get us limped along through this and still maintain an above average team, and well above average, is nothing short of impressive. And so where I see a leadership opportunity, I've seen it on this jail board when I've sat between two sheriffs, and we've had, our veteran sheriff that understands this conundrum as well as the other sheriffs, but they really struggle as board members in the jail to authorize an increase that may cost them the deputies they're already short. So this is a compounded problem, and it's even worse in the nurses' side. And so I just can't emphasize, not only do we really have no choice here, but we need to continue to monitor this because Tim's done such a good job of keeping this out of our attention as long as we could. But even when we solve it in this coming budget, it's not solved. The market continues to tell us that these people require more because when you look at what they're getting paid for nurses and even for deputies, these guys aren't going home with 25 and 32 days off of injuries that could have been fatal. And the reality is some of those injuries, I would argue, get caused because we're understaffed. So we're well beyond the time where each of these 5 counties need to do something. And anything Middlesex County can do to put an overwhelming stamp on, yes, Tim, of course, and we're going to make sure you have this. We need to stand out and make it clear that Middlesex isn't hemming and hawing about money that should have already been plowed into the Regional Security Center years ago, in my opinion. So thank you, Superintendent Dodd. And your comment on the judge is probably correct. But after the judge, the person I'm most afraid of is of course, the superintendent of the Regional Security Center.
No. To give you an example of why, another example, if you will, thank you, Mr. Coons, for your kind words. When we were dealing with the nurse situation, we had a company that actively tried to recruit every one of our nurses. We had 7, they hired 3. It was a stay-at-home, it is a stay-at-home nursing company that we were at $60,000 a year for nurses, and they were paying them $65,000 to stay at home. And I'm not saying they weren't working, but they didn't have to leave the house. They could stay in their pajamas. All they had to do was agree to answer the phone and the computer for 8 hours a day. And 2 of our nurses are still with that company. So, and we have gone to $70,000, and they have now increased it again, trying to get our staff. But our staff is not interested in what we have now.
They're literally headhunting your staff.
They are, yes. And that's not just us. I mean, when you look at the sheriff's office, I'm on the executive board for the academy. So when we go over there, we have a rule amongst all of our agencies that we don't snipe other people, other agencies' staff. It's just not the right thing to do. But the officers talk. So they leave I've had them leave for $500, and I never hold anybody back. I never ask them not to do it. I just tell them that grass is not always greener on the other side. I mean, that's what happens, and it's a different, when I said at the beginning, when it's a different generation, it's a different mindset. It's more of a job and not your second family, and I think it's generational. I could talk all night on it, but there are a lot of things I would love to show you. You're more than welcome. I can give you a tour. I assure you we will keep it the budget as low as we possibly can. And this is the level that I felt that we needed to bring staff in. I still have 8 openings. The applicant pool is unbelievable as far low, the quality. So we had interviews 2 weeks ago, or actually the week before, April 26th, and the very first candidate that came in to interview was wearing tennis shoes, shorts, and a T-shirt, and the sleeve was ripped. The second gentleman came in tennis shoes, jeans, and
T-shirt, and his first thing out of his mouth is, "I don't want to work shift work, let's negotiate the hours that I work." It's just a different, it's a different mindset. So I hope you, ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed night, and is there any questions I can answer? If not?
I've got one, but I'm hesitant to ask it, but I've got to get clarity on this. Did I hear you correctly, that the state has a regulation for people that may or may not be addicts? I'm going to murder this, but I'm going to ask it. That you have to sit down and ask an inmate?
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Not yet.
But it's actually proposed.
They're actually doing it in California.
Oh, well, that makes perfect sense.
Well, it's actually, well, there's a lot of, we could have a lot of fun.
Well, we won't do it here, but someone at the state level thought it would be wise to ask inmates if they want a pill that will make them high.
Technically, yes. Yes, sir.
All right.
So that's the goal, the whole goal of that is, there is a positive goal to that. I don't agree with the program, but there is a positive goal to that. The goal is to reduce overdose deaths, to reduce deaths. And if this were to go in place, then it would drastically reduce deaths. But my question is, one, financially, how are we going to pay for it? Because I know that the state indicates that the opioid money is going to pay for it, but once it's gone, it's on the jurisdictions. And just like I explained, it's 70 times 1,400. Even if it was 20 times 1,400, it would be astronomical in an annual budget. But there's the ADA, you can go today, the ADA has and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've got it at my office, but they have diagnosed opioid addiction as a disability. So the world is changing in a different place. So there's different, we're dealing with mental health, we're dealing with this, we're dealing with staff shortages, we're dealing with inmate rights that we have to abide to. But what I'm going through right now is the new thing called a sealed kosher meal. Never heard of it? It's a religious belief. I'm waiting. The Department of Corrections just instituted that. So if they say that we have to do that, currently we pay 89 cents a meal. If they say we have to do that, that meal now becomes $8 and something a meal. And so these are just the little things that we battle with every day. But anyways, hope you guys, ladies, have a blessed night.
This has been very informative. Thank you.
I'll be more than happy to go over anything with you all at any time. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go to the next item, and then we'll take a break after the next agenda item, which is the sports complex lighting. And Tammy Putney is not here, but
coming forward. Going to make it quick. I'm Joe Hyman. I live at 274 Riverside Drive in Deltaville. I was supposed to probably turn this in prior to the meeting, and like many volunteers, I didn't come through. So we did the best we could. Thank you. Thank you for having me. What you have is a small packet. It shows the pavilion that was completed last year. It was built with heavy volunteer support. Got a lot of support from that. There's an article from the paper from April, talks about a lot of the fundraising we did. This fundraising was really led by the Sports Complex Committee and the Little League. And we got just a lot of people out to do a lot of work. I was going to go into a little bit of detail on it, but seeing the time, I think I'll just let you guys peruse those and ask questions. So most of you probably know the sports complex, but let me just summarize a few things. We'll consist of 4 baseball fields, softball fields, 2 full-size soccer fields, a playground, a walking track, the community pavilion that's highlighted in here. It's got, we have 4 buildings, a field house, which includes batting cages and a meeting room and equipment storage in there for Little League. It's got a concession area. I don't think it has a kitchen, but it has a prep area. and it has storage, coolers and chillers and all that stuff. We've got, on the soccer fields, we've got separate men's and women's bathrooms for access down there. We, of course, have an equipment shed also, got several pieces of equipment, things like sand pros, golf carts, things to drag the fields and clean up. So we've got quite a bit of things that happen at the sports complex. Currently, the county funds the sports complex about $22,000 to $24,000 a year. That's typically our request. In your packet is a budget of what we spent this past year. You'll see that under field and building maintenance and some general things, we got $31,849. And then capital improvements and repairs, that says $76,500. In red, as part of that $76,000 is $50,000 in donated labor. We talked to all of the volunteers that went in, summarized what their contribution was, and summed that up to approximately $50,000. We had a really heavy capital improvements plan this year because we had some buildings that were literally falling apart and we needed some love. We had Hatton Homes go down and replace probably 30 or 40 sheets of siding on our field house. That had rotted and curled and everything, and we had a roof blow off on one of our fields, Field 4, on a dugout, and the Pullmans went down and replaced both of those roofs, donated all the labor. Sports complex paid for the materials. We painted every single building in the facility, and we got a huge donation. We got one of the buildings painted for free, and the rest of them, we got discounted paint from Sherwin-Williams, and the painter gave it to us at an extremely inexpensive price. So just a lot of good people doing a lot of good work. This past year for spring ball, we had, I think, 230 some, maybe 240 kids playing. I've been involved with Little League and the sports complex for 20 plus years, pretty much ever since it's been there. My kids played, I coached it, all that stuff. And that's one of the largest numbers I can recall. So it really had a big, we also have 140 kids playing in a fall ball league. That's definitely as big as I've heard. So the fields are getting used quite a bit. Just an update on who uses the fields. Right now, YMCA soccer, middle school soccer. There's a camp called Seven Rivers Soccer Camp, which includes local kids and kids outside that are using it. Middlesex Parks and Recreation, the Bam Bam program. Middlesex High School cross country team. Middlesex School 8th grade baseball and softball. Middlesex County Little League, of course, which you talked about. The fall league is the Middlesex County 241 program. Organizations like Relay for Life come down to our walking track. A lot of church groups come down, and then just birthday parties, family gatherings. The way we handle it is that people have to send in an application. We have to make sure they have insurance, and then we approve them, and we make sure that they can fit in with all the other things that the complex has going. Field usage is way up over the last 2 years with all of these groups using it. The complex committee is as accommodating as possible. I don't think we almost ever turn anybody down. We do make sure that it's Middlesex specific as far as the kids go. Of course, many of these leagues like travel will involve other kids, but if it has a significant Middlesex County population, then we pretty much approve the use. So we like the use, but it's very taxing. Johnny Fleet and Tammy Putney, probably the leaders of the committee, really pay attention to the field conditions. We probably have the finest fields in the district, and then we hear that all the time. And we have a really spectacular complex. So all that leads up to this. We do a great job as a committee raising money and keeping this facility in first class condition. And we do it by raising private funds. We do fundraisers. We have a golf tournament. We have a golf tournament scheduled for October. We expect to raise about $25,000. This leads me to where we are. We have 4 fields that are lit, 4 baseball fields. They've been lit for 20-some years, most of the complex life. The bulbs are failing, well, they always fail, we have to replace bulbs, but the ballasts are failing and we're not able to get replacements. We're actually robbing from other places to get matching equipment to keep our fields lit. So we undertook, we know we have a need to replace the lighting, and we were planning on doing it with LED, which of course is where everybody's going. We were kind of shocked to find out that the cost to replace the lights were about $150,000 per field. I think we probably lit the complex for $150,000, all 4 fields when they went in. So the lighting cost is huge. So we came up with a strategy and started last year, and we applied for a grant from River County's Community Foundation, and we received a $50,000 grant. We're now going to do this golf tournament. We expect to raise $25,000. That's pretty common, that we would raise $25,000. We've upped some of our sponsorship fees, and I think I'm pretty confident we'll do the $25,000. So right now, we are coming to the county for a request for $75,000. We have $50,000 in a grant. We have $25,000 that the sports complex is going to raise on their own, and that leaves us $75,000 short. And so we're here to let the county know that the county's fields and the county's project down there is in need of lighting. And we're going to be able to, when we relamp one field, we'll be able to use some of those parts to keep our other fields alive with lighting to the best of our ability. And just know that means that we do extra maintenance. We have people over there more times changing bulbs and changing ballasts and doing all those things. So the quicker we can get to all of these fields being LED, they certainly are much lower maintenance. They're certainly lower cost on electrical, save us a lot of money on electrical. The field we're talking about doing has 50 lamps. Under LED, we'll be down to 35 lamps. So, doing the same job. So even, when you look at that, we have fewer things to fix as we get each field done. So that's where we are right now. We've gotten bids all over the place on doing this. One of the things we found is that without having the funds ready to go where we can say we're going to pull the trigger, it's hard to get real solid numbers where somebody says, I'm willing to do this project, we'll sign the paper right now. One of the things we found is a quote that we got about 3 or 4 months ago. The lamps that they quoted are no longer available, the LED lamps. It's already changed, it's already a new program, so when we need to be able to go and say, we are ready to pull the trigger, and we'd like to get this project going and get this project done in time for spring ball. I think everybody knows that, most of what happens in Little League happens in the evenings, especially early in the spring. Fall ball certainly happens in a lot of the evenings, and, the lights are just very important. So we've gone from focusing on possibly thinking about lighting the soccer fields, because you have the same thing. You have only daytime, availability, and you have soccer in the spring and fall. But we've totally just pulled back from that and decided our sole focus is going to be on these lights until we get them done. We talked about changing the dugouts and doing some things there, but we had a meeting and we said until we accomplish these lights, which are really the most important, we've got to focus on those. So that's what our fundraising is going to be focused on, and that's what our objectives are focused on, is getting all 4 of these lights done. So for today, it's a request for $75,000. And we think it's money well spent. For a lot of good presentations from people about joint efforts, and I think this is one of the best private-public partnerships that the county is engaged in. You get a lot of value. You got great volunteers running it, working very hard, and we get a lot of support from the community because we ask for it, and it's great. And I will say that, especially with Little League, because of the change of families that come through there, we always sort of have new volunteers. We get people and they'll be around for 4, 5, 6, 10 years, some of us 25 or 30 years. With Little League, you get new people, new families, and new opportunities to get people to volunteer, and we found that to be very successful. So that's my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, Mr. Hyman, I have a quick question. Since you're a business person and you breeze through it pretty quick, but I think the complex and the county is, and you used the word unique, maybe you want to elaborate a little more. The public and private partnership, particularly at the complex, is remarkable for what money has been spent there. and the county, the complex has not come to the county to ask for any of that. Yes, they pay for the electric bill and they pay for some grass cutting there, but all of the capital improvements that occurred this year and the people that stepped up and donated labor to that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, it really is. Even if you subtracted the $50,000 in donations, you're talking about over a $60,000 budget. You're talking about close to $60,000 budget, and we usually come in here and request between 22 and 25. The bulk of the difference of that is made up by the golf tournament. So in fairness, we will be focusing our funds from the golf tournament on this lighting project. And so, that'll question what we do. But we have done probably the largest capital expenditure in years on that facility to get those buildings up to speed, and we feel pretty good about it. They're in good shape, the roofs are in good shape, and we just feel good about where the complex is right now. Fields are constant maintenance, but it's just almost routine maintenance for us, especially because of the people we have involved. Like Johnny Fleet and Tammy Putney, and then all kinds of people that come in with equipment and volunteer when we need heavy work. It's just remarkable. So, and the sports complex committee manages everything out there. Manages the day-to-day, manages every one of these groups that come, manages the insurance. So, questions?
I don't have any questions. I'd like to make a motion. Y'all heard enough?
Reggie or John, do you have any questions or comments?
No, okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve $75,000 for sports compact lighting for them.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kuntz, by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Kuntz. Any further discussion?
I would just like to say, as you know, it's very beneficial. One thing you might forgot because we don't have it anymore, when we had the youth coach football team.
Oh, yeah.
They were well
All over.
in, and we used it and everything, because my son was a little one then.
Yeah.
But I was just saying it was very beneficial to Middlesex County and the citizens.
Yeah. There was a large adult program too there, including football, flag football in the wintertime, and baseball, adult programs. COVID kind of wiped that out, but hopefully that'll come back too. So it's a really great facility and something to for the county to be super proud of, because all across the board, people tell us how great it is. Yeah, thanks for that.
The only thing I got to say about it, when you put it for the budget at the first of the year, I hope we have a little more foresight, so we won't have to, shelf funds around it, you're coming up in the middle of the year, to ask for funds, and I know these kind of things happen, but I would hope in, the near future that we do a more job, a better job of foresight and things that we want to do, so y'all can put it in the budget and we can go ahead and approve it. Then we won't have to shuffle funds around, but, wonderful presentation. I understand the contract, complex, all my kids went through it. It's right in my backyard, it's nice, and, it is what it is.
Well, I'll take that as we'll see in the spring then, before the next budget meeting.
Any other comments? May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Williams? Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, John.
Thank you. In reference to his comments, when would those funds be available to us?
I was going to speak to that a little bit, Joe. Thank you. So our understanding would be it would be a supplemental appropriation from fund balance, and if it's a consensus of the board, we could probably make that happen after this meeting. Or would we need to come back in with a supplemental next month, Anne Marie?
I'm okay with it this way, but they don't have the rest of their money yet. Would it be appropriate
We
to
do.
wait until
Oh, I'm
they
sorry.
get the rest of their money?
Yeah, we don't
Last time I
have the
spoke
golf
to Tammy,
tournament.
I thought that was,
Yeah, we don't have the golf tournament. We do have the River County's funds.
Okay.
And it's specifically for this project, so we would need to use them for this project.
well then, what I would say then, in light of what Mr. Williams said, we'll work with Tammy and Joe and, one, have this multi-year project on their capital improvements plan, and then work with them on the spring request for the ensuing years, and then I guess wait for you to get in a place where you need the money to process the supplemental appropriation.
Yeah, I just need to know if we can go, if we can, if the funds would be available after our golf tournament, that we could work on this for the winter time, since it's outside of your normal budget. That's my real
The
question.
next board meeting is October 3rd, so we can do a supplemental.
Okay.
and
That way.
Have everything
Thank
ready
you.
to go.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for.
All right, thank you. Let's take a 10-minute break and be back at 5 minutes to 6, please. Mike's up.
Softer seats. Now that people stay too long. But hey, Larry, what needs to change is those seats up there. That'll get them moving.
Buy yourself a pen.
If those seats become our seats, you guys will move faster.
Good job, buddy. Look, Larry's coming.
Yes, sir.
How you doing? All right.
Good, how about you? Fine.
Yeah.
It seems like you haven't seen you for a long time, because it's been 6 weeks since the last meeting.
It's 6 weeks.
Well, it was really at the beginning of the month in August.
And we can't raise the funds, so the other thing is. It's been a while.
I
talked to him around here. And probably larger. So, by doing this, yes, we'll probably get more access to other monies. So you're gonna October. About 4 weeks.
It's in the October. Come on, man.
What's the theme? Or is it? The theme? We have an annual on the Health Department, about fundraising, force them out there, we have a great dinner, after the game, they were golf course. Yeah. Yeah, you can come by yourself. Yeah, you can come to Sligo, you can actually buy just dinner.
Listen, I've already strapped you. I'm on the elevator. What I had was last.
Saturday. No, Friday.
Friday. We got 27.
13. Friday 13. It's a lucky day.
Right.
Yeah, that's not 20 feet. Charlie, Joe Hyman.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Remind Tammy the capital improvements plan submittals are due by what, November 3rd? No, it's first part of November, so we'll work with y'all to get that project.
Yeah, we just come here and meet with you, tell us what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing we really know is what we spend, so we can look at that and say, this is our new budget.
Well, Wild River County has that extra money.
Right.
Make it a multi-year grant request, so
Yeah.
you can track it every year.
Well, and we're anticipating getting funds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that's what we did with the water and the sewer connection. And use it as we need it. And we'll hook you up for the next 4 years. And the only other thing I said to
Yeah.
Hey, are you going to be able to put Lacey outside?
So, I'll be honest with you, I haven't. That's right.
Our meeting is 6 o'clock.
Can you just give me an assurance? But if you're ready to go, I mean, really. And so, because you place that point ready, that's how the bid process works. That's right, for a bid process. So,
well, but you're right, I mean, they have access to material now. The mother.
Come back home and spend the night there.
Good. That's right.
Yeah, I need to talk to you. Get together with you and talk about stuff. I'm running for board supervisor at the same time. So.
Got dinner at 6. Mine's 37.
District is fine.
37.
Okay. So, yeah, Lud had asked me to run in his place. So, I know. I mean, I've already sat down with Greg Chambers and a whole bunch of other people. So.
Yes, are we, Reginald,
His mic is on.
7151.
I know these guys well, so I can talk to them.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
So far,
Since you had to do with it.
I was worried about that.
But I'll give you a call.
Don't believe everything you hear.
Yeah, no. But I'll give you a call.
I'm not gonna blame anybody but you. You know, that'll take time, but that's.
You mean here? Here. It's a long question. I like short meetings where you get to the point, you get everything
I was
solved.
actually worried about my dog.
These I'm up next, but. No, I know, but I'm just saying.
All righty. Yeah, so Lud, if you want to do that, you can just recess for dinner and then come in, we'll pick up on county engineer stuff. Or get him
All
out
right,
like that
well,
away
like I said, I'm gonna be here for a while.
before we go to dinner. And then all the regular stuff, you wait till after. Yeah, do a band, and then recess for dinner, and then come back in and take care of the rest of the regular stuff.
And I managed to stay awake through the whole damn thing. And I felt like sitting down here, so you ask me one more damn question, I wouldn't stand up myself.
I didn't talk that much. I'm not the reason we're this place.
All right, well, I'll see if I can get those. I think it's good to know. I couldn't read what we have, you said photocopies, and they've got like struck down.
You can get them.
Okay, thank you. Well, can we go into closed session? That's a great idea. So we can kind of tag team together if that's okay. If you don't mind.
Well, it works for you.
Luckily, I don't have to make a.
Whatever, yes,
But you may be able to squeeze Charlie in, because I don't think he's got but like a couple of minutes, and then he'll be done. And then go to, just saying. No, I'm being serious. So then it's Charlie, and right. There you go.
All right, I'm gonna call the meeting back to order, please. Next item of business is the town of Urbana. This is a request for waiving permit fees. And
That's,
I got a notice of correction, Bill, I think that's what you're gonna come.
Yeah, when the request was first made, I didn't do my due diligence, and there's a confusion in there, in that the number that was initially written down was what we actually were charged, but what we're asking for is what we actually paid the county, and that's the correction, which is 3,019. $3,039 and 17 cents.
Right.
Which was a building permit that we paid the county, and we would like to be reimbursed.
We already approved I think, did we approve the reimbursement for the wrong amount?
We were told because it was already paid that we had to come,
It's a waiver request.
yeah.
We should have had them requested before they withdraw, and then we could have waived.
Right. Yeah, it's a request for a refund because we didn't get a request for a waiver.
In the amount of $3,039.17.
17 cents, correct.
Excuse me, it's a supplement that's been added. You received it at your seat.
Right. The original documentation would have been on page 60 of your booklet, but then they asked for the replacement page.
Right. The original number was written down as to what we actually paid the contractor, which was incorrect, and I apologize for that.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we waive the permit fee for, how much was it? $3,039.17 to the town of Alabama.
For a refund.
For a refund.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Kevin, unmuted.
I heard it. He said aye. Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
And Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Next, we'll do the county engineer update.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll be hopefully short and sweet. Two areas I want to cover. One's the airport, and one is the Puller building, and I'll also give a quick update on the sewer project. One, for the airport, we did receive the revised ALP from our engineer of record, Parrish and Partners. There was actually two revised plans, one for the east side and one for the west side. The east side is where the existing terminal and fuel facility is. The west side, of course, will be all greenfield, all new development. We've had discussions with regards to which option we're looking at. We're pricing both options. This is going to be it's going to be a phased approach. It'll be a 3 to 5 year program based on the cost, but we're also looking at economy of scale. If we can group one or two, say a new fuel facility and terminal building together, what that cost would be versus doing them separately, along with costs of hangars. Additionally, we received a non-solicited proposal from a third party who would like to lease the airport and also build the expansion for us. We had an interesting conversation this morning with Mark Flynn, our attorney for the airport. There are some points that we agree on, some that we don't. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the talking points that we were considering. There is room for negotiation. There are things that we need to, I feel, stand our ground on. However, that does not mean that we cannot issue a formal request for proposal and put this on the street for bid. We are not to that point yet. We're still looking at our options. Wayne was a part of our conversation this morning. We had some very good points that we discussed. I think we're for looking at the proposal, but again, there's things that we need to negotiate and/or review the options before we get too far down the road so we know which direction we want to go. The Puller building, the design team, let me rephrase that, the committee met with the design team and reviewed the 75% drawings. We provided comments back to the design team. They're incorporating those. I will meet with the design team and determine when we will meet again. We are working around Sheriff Bushy's schedule with regards to the upcoming Oyster Festival, and I think he said Fridays and weekends were bad for him. We'll probably meet more, probably in first part of October, once we get word back from all of the sub-consultants from the design team, and so that we know that they've incorporated all of our comments and have a better feel for the cost, revised cost of what these, our comments will be. We'll provide that information to the committee, and then at that point, we'll be able to come to the board. Hopefully, it won't be anything extravagant, anything that we don't know about, and we'll be able to move forward with that project. With regards to the sewer project, both HRC and Timmons will be coming to the board meeting next month with their quarterly update. They'll have more detailed presentations with regards to schedules and coordination. The thing, very quickly, HRC will be bidding the Saluda, Hartfield, and I believe it's the Deltaville Force Main next month. Timmons is working on the 90% drawings for Saluda and for topping. We should have those hopefully by the end of this month, first part of next month. We're trying to mesh our schedules with HRSD so that we can potentially economy of scale, and hopefully there's no conflict of interest with regards to contractors, because we don't want to be in a bidding war between HRSD and our projects with the limited amount of contractors that are available for this type of work. So we've established there's no conflicts of interest if the same contractor gets the HRSD project and our project. So, and we're hoping that through economy of scale, we can achieve that. So, but again, they'll be coming to the board meeting next month with more detailed information. So with that, is there any questions, anything that I can offer?
Well,
you were coming.
Yeah, I got a question. I was told that I ought to ask less questions, but that's just not part of me. At one point, we were on some sort of time delay on what, from HRSD's standpoint. Have those been resolved, and are we back in sync with our timetable and their timetable?
Yes and no. With regards to the delays, their overall schedule has been delayed.
Yes.
From our perspective, we were ready to bid topping. Those drawings we'll probably have those drawings 100% by next quarter. We're ready to bid that project first quarter of next year. The problem that we're having, and again, we're coordinating this with HRSD, is their Deltaville Force Main, which they're bidding next month, will not be available by the time we finish our project. So we're having to delay the topping project until such time as they're, how do I say it, Matt?
Ready to receive it.
Right, thank you. We've already working with their engineers to realign the connection point for the topping piping. So they've worked that into their design, so that's in the package that they're bidding next month. But we've got to wait until they're to the point ready to receive our piping to tie in.
Okay. One other question. Have we had communications with Grace Point Campground about hooking up to the sewer system?
Yes. I plan on meeting with corporate staff sometime in the month of September.
Okay.
And if I may elaborate a little bit on what Charlie just said, it's my understanding the last we heard was the time frame for HRSD's transmission main to come online and become operational and be able to receive flow is December 2026 now.
That is correct.
That may slip further. I mean, we'll see how everything goes with that, but it slipped substantially. So if that was what you were referring to. Now, what we are working with Timmons to do is see if we can't, since we're going to own and operate a certain amount of the collection system, build our collection system and just cap it, leave it in place Well, we do not want to pre-build like lift stations and electronic moving parts type things and have them set for a year, because then HRSD would not want to receive and own or operate and maintain them. But for pipes in the ground, we may be able to have a little bit more flexibility. We're trying to ascertain that. Because as Charlie's very well said, we don't want to be bidding against HRSD's big projects, because, yeah, there's only so many contractors going around. They are scarce, just like personnel these days. So we're being cognizant of that. So anyone who asks, I tell them, yeah, probably first part of 2027. Okay. Because we can't take flow until we can send it somewhere. So.
Thank you for that, too. Yeah, our plan is to put as much pipe in the ground as we can. In my discussions with Jeremiah, I just flat out tell him, I said, look, we're not going to build anything because we don't want to sit there for a year until you're ready to receive, because now the contractor has to come back, dues all start up and check out, and then the warranty starts. There's no contractor that I know of would ever agree to that. So those are the kind of coordination issues that we're dealing with, but they're being more flexible now because they're running into the same issues. So, any other questions?
Thank you, Charlie. Before we break, I would like to, if you'll indulge me, I would like to speak to a topic that Deborah Miller brought up, because I do have some updates on Broad Creek. The marina owners had been contacting me recently with the urgency of getting something done, because increasingly they were having their customers run aground. We reached out to the Corps of Engineers that had originally planned to do a survey of Broad Creek in November. I reached out to Congressman Whitman, making him aware of the urgency of the issue. Coincidentally, he was over at the Milford Haven Coast Guard Station a couple of days later, brought the topic up to somebody at the Coast Guard Station who had just seen this urgent emergency request come across his desk. We have gotten great support from MPPDC. We had a web meeting last week that included the Corps, the Coast Guard, the area of the Coast Guard that's responsible for aids to navigation, MPPDC, Dave Kretz with our planning and zoning, myself, and the current plan is that the Corps they've advanced the schedule for a new survey of Broad Creek. The process, you've got a survey, you've got to do soil samples of the areas that need to be dredged, so you know where they're going to go. You have to get the permits for where the dredge material is going to go. You have to get the permits for the actual dredging itself. Then you have to go to the contractors and get the bid. So the plan is to begin the surveys September 29th. It will take several weeks before the surveys come back to us and can be used, so we then know where do we get soil samples in order to get permitting for what we do with the dredge spoils. Then we get permits to get the dredging done, get bids, and the idea is to dredge hotspots, and hotspots only, in order to have at least the minimum depth of, it should be 7 feet. If we're running around at 6 feet in the center of the channel, that's certainly a problem. It's primarily between markers 2 and 3 in the channel. That's where everybody is running aground, so there is a limited scope that would be necessary. There's no way that we're going to get grant money to get this done. This is what the dredge fund that we have set aside is for, in case it's needed. So I just wanted to give everybody that update. Great cooperation, from the congressman to the Coast Guard, reviewing how we can do this, and the Coast Guard has even added to their notice to mariners, a notice that the survey itself is available through the waterway guide and perhaps other guides, so that mariners who are unfamiliar with the channel can at least see where the hot spots are, and hopefully that will help them navigate through. Of course, if they've got a 65-foot wide barge, they don't have a whole lot of room to get through that channel. And so it's important, obviously, for that purpose that we get the whole channel done. But this interim step, I just really want to recognize that there was great cooperation in recognizing the level of emergency that this really is, and it's being addressed.
Well, basically, the slowdown part of all this is the logistics and the permitting and all that, right?
Yeah.
So how much, I know we have set aside for the dredge fund. Is there enough money to do what we need to do, right? Or is
Yes.
it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah, okay. I was just making everything clear. Okay, thank you.
Well, if I may, I would add, the PDC staff has been incredible with this project.
They have.
They really have. I mean, they know more than we'll ever know about this type of subject, and they're just great. So having them as a resource to help is tremendous.
We wouldn't be here without that.
Right.
Yeah. All right,
Have to break yet. The purpose for our break at this time isn't quite ready here.
okay, well,
Okay.
let's go then over to
The next one was citizen
Anne Marie
appointments, maybe?
Riccardi, who has a couple of topics here.
Okay, I think my first one up is citizen appointments. Oh, is that right?
Where is it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, we jumped ahead. Now I'm off my page numbers. Okay. In front of you tonight, we have a total of 4 staff recommendations. One is to reappoint Mr. Chapman to the Airport Committee, appoint Mr. Charles Towns to the Board of Zoning Appeals in Pine Top, appoint Casey Mewborn to the VASAP Tri-River ASAP. That was the one that Mike Hurd recently left that board. And Ms. Lauren Wood requested to be added to the Recreation Committee, and we still have many vacancies on the Recreation Committee. So at this time, I'd like for those positions to be appointed, number one, and for, just a reminder, I need you all to either locate some citizens to fill these vacancies, or let me go ahead and start posting on Facebook and public social media for these.
Mr. Chairman, my only caveat to that is for the Board of Zoning Appeals, if you could make your motion separate for that, please, and that is to recommend for their appointment. That requires the judge's order.
That's
for
right,
that one,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Forgot about that,
So
thank you.
sometimes I like to have the minutes so I can kind of break those out, but everything else can be done conglomerate except for that one, please.
Okay, then, as a first motion, I would endorse Mr. Charles Towns for Board of Zoning Appeals. I've met with him at length. He's extremely well qualified.
Thank you.
I move that we approve that person.
Thank you, John.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Kuhn, second by Mr. Jesse. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Me. Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. The motion carries. Entertain another motion to approve the other candidates.
So moved. So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Coons to approve the other candidates as explained by Ms. Riccardi.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion
Excellent.
carries. Next, you've got the Delta.
Well, like I said, I just would like to remind you all, we need applicants, so appreciate your support on that one. The second one is the Delta Maritime Museum. This is, get to my page, if you'll go to page 69 of your booklet, you'll see that there is an estimate of $1,454.06 for the new exhibit center permit applications for the Deltaville Maritime Museum that they're asking for a waiver for. Request approval of the waiver.
So moved.
Second it.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Jesse. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jesse.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye.
What was the amount again?
$1,454.06.
Oh, is it? My bad. Back of the page. Okay, thank you.
Want me to go on to my next item?
You want to roll?
Okay, I'm on a roll. The next item is budget supplement request FY '24-12. Several months ago, the EDA applied for and were approved for a grant of $20,000. When the money came in, it was given to Middlesex County instead of the EDA. The EDA has requested us to disperse this money to them. Couldn't do that without a budget appropriation, even though it is their, and they gave me all the information about their grant. So the information is there, it's their grant, we received the money, we're simply asking that we be allowed to appropriate it and send it to them.
I'll make a motion for FY 2024-12 budget supplement request form for $20,000. EDA reimbursement. Right.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Roll on, Anne Marie.
Good, excellent. The next item is to request permission to sell surplus vehicles. As you know, we have several vehicles that have been purchased this year and last year, and these are the vehicles that are no longer being used. The list includes the Taurus, the Charger, an F-150, a Safari van, 2 Caprices, an Impala, and a Sierra 2500. None of these vehicles have been, I want to say none of these vehicles have been requested for reuse. Ergo, I would go ahead and put them in the govdeals.com sale. In addition, our relationship with Enterprise has allowed us to put a minimum bid, that they will be the minimum bid for any of these vehicles. Now, that being said, I got a text this morning from the animal shelter asking if they could, if we'd be willing to sell them the Safari van. So that would mean taking it off this list. I am not willing to do that because I don't know anything about that. But if we research this further, I may come back and ask this to be re-added back to our asset fleet. So that's the, again, that never in my life has that come up that someone that has at the last minute said, but wait. But here we are, they said, but wait. So anyway, at this time, I ask that these items be declared surplus. We will treat them as surplus and hopefully get your best dollar for them. I'm going to go ahead and sell the van unless,
Vance had a lot of issues.
yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, is I think they were looking at it, not realizing that it's,
And Emery, if I may, just real quick, I know Don's got a question. I think our plan is, as you very well stated, is we're going to try to sell these through our sources first, and then if we can't, that's when we're going to take Enterprise up on them trying to sell them on our behalf or purchase them outright and
That's
participate
correct.
in their program. The reason I wanted to clarify that point is that's one of the reasons we're partnering with Enterprise on these leased vehicles, is so we could take advantage of how much money they can get for some of our used ones if we can't get a better deal. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
So the motion is excluding the Safari van?
oh no, I'm
No.
going to get rid of it. I just wanted to make sure, if I did find that it was satisfactory, I will come back and ask that it be pulled. But for now, I'd like to go ahead and just plan to dispose of all of them.
Okay, so moved on the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Jesse. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to point out, I really appreciate how Anne Marie made that motion so that she could move forward and still keep us abreast of what's going on. That is the way we need to think when we're bringing motions to the board. Thank you, that's all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams and Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye.
Okay. So it's
Motion
4-0 on that one.
Next item is cigarette tax review in your packet, page 76. Staff reports are in pages 77 through 81. And next is the county attorney update.
Well, I did have one thing, but
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna make my report very brief tonight because I know we're waiting on the food to get here and I don't want to get stampeded. So I'm gonna have a more detailed report on the budget. As the board may be aware, and I've emailed y'all letting you know, the General Assembly, it seems to have passed a budget amendment very late in the first week in September, and now I think it's headed to the governor's office for signature, which everyone expects he will sign. And that has some nuances that will affect our budget positively and I don't think very negatively. I'll have a more detailed report in October, and I'll have probably a written report in your packet on it in October too. So I'm going to put a pin in that one for time. One of the more important things that I wanted to make sure I got on the board's plate and in your minds tonight is our regional reassessment program is moving forward, it seems. There will be a presentation at the Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission on January 27th from the Gloucester staff, along with the company that provides their software, which is really the cusp of their program. I know Mr. Williams and Mr. Jesse are the delegates to the Planning District Commission. I'm going to try to join remotely if I can because it's very important, and I've asked Anne Marie and Kevin to be involved too, since we're talking about software and some.
You said January 27th?
September 27th.
That's not what you said.
Did I say January? Oh my God, well that's not moving fast at all. Blood sugar. September 27th, the last Wednesday in the month. Why this is important, our assessment ratio has slipped from 9.97 when we did our reassessment. Within 6 months of completion of the reassessment, it was at 0.91. Our last reassessment hit the books on January 2022. And within 6 months after that, we were already about 9 basis points lower on the assessment ratio. I'll explain in more detail what that is when we have more time. But today, as of a notice from the State Tax Department, we're at 78.78. And it's not that our assessment was not accurate. It was. It was accurate for when it was producing are based on the property values right before the inflationary period really took effect. Now we're already seeing within this short space of time, we have an assessment ratio of about 7.8. Why this is important, it is always the goal to try to keep your assessment ratio within 90 and 110 of 100% fair market value. Because if you're over fair market value on your assessments, you can always adjust the rate down. But if you're this far under, it will affect other income streams, specifically our Public Service Corporation tax line items. So we want an accurate assessment. We want an accurate reflection of what our property values are based on the latest sales data. And right now we're seeing ours at 78.78%. Others around us are worse. I won't name names, but there are other counties that have had theirs recently done too, and they're at 7.4. So
does that mean the value of the assessment is at 78, we're lower than what the value, fair market value is? Is that
based on recent sales, yes, sir, that's exactly precisely what that means. So the State Department of Tax will keep track of this as part of their mission to supply data to the State Corporation Commission, which helps set the tax levies on public service corporations, Dominion Power, telephone companies, other utilities. It's very important when you receive a lot of your revenue from public service corporations to keep that assessment ratio as tight at 100 as you can, because you leave money on the table if you don't. Right. And I'm going to murder this because I'm trying to do it quick. But what the assessment ratio seeks to do is it affords the State Corporation Commission a fair way of levying property taxes on our utilities. Because I guess the viewpoint is, and this is some of my personal opinion, if the community is allowing their assessed values to not reflect actual sales data or as close to a fair market value as possible, it's not fair for the utilities to pay full price. They get that same discount too, because all the other property owners enjoy that. And we don't have power to assess the public service corporations directly. The state corporation does. So it's more important in areas like Surrey, Bath County, where they have extensive public service corporation properties that pay a large portion of their real estate and property taxes. A little less so for us, but it's still very important. So we're at 78 now. It's probably going to dip again next year. Probably need to get crack-a-lacking on our reassessments, is what my bottom line message is. That's the 30-second elevator speech. And I was all ready with graphs and everything. And I'll have a written report on that as well in October.
I was going to add that our position relative to the State Corporation Commission is in the process of changing, I would imagine, with this big battery facility. It does not take a lot of space, and it will not be an eyesore necessarily, but it is a significant amount of millions of dollars of investment. So we won't be Bath County or Surrey County, we won't have pump storage, and we won't have nuclear, but that is a big FCC asset that is changing our profile. And whether we are Bath County or Middlesex County, you know, we should be between 90 and 110 for a plethora of reasons.
Agreed.
And so I agree with you, and I hope that what is understood here is there is urgency in getting our reassessment back in line, or we will be jacking around with tax rates in a hostile environment some years down the road as a result of not taking action sooner than later.
And that's a very good point. The board may recall during our budget discussions that our public service corporation tax line item went up a little bit, our revenues that we were going to expect, and that's because of certain improvements that Virginia Power and other utilities have made. John's correct. When the battery facility comes online, it will come up again for that reason, or because new assets will be added to that line. I'm very optimistic this time, more than any of the previous times we've talked about regional reassessment, because I think there's a great deal of autonomy for each county built into what's being proposed. So it's not like we're just glomming on with a region, we got to walk in step. Gloucester and the other counties involved have done a really good job thinking through this, and I think the presentation on the 27th is going to be something the board's going to be very happy with. And with that, I'm going to
just because I can't resist doing the numbers, growing from 78% to 90% is over a 15% increase.
That's correct.
Last time we had an assessment, it was after 5 years, we went up 13% after 5 years.
It's an inflationary period, and if you recall, we brought this reassessment online January 1, 2022. So what they were assessing was our values right about the time the property market was going to peak. So we assessed them, just a little bit before the peak. And when the peak happened, and now here we are, very short time. So probably need to do a reassessment in next year, gentlemen. I'm going to be on a mission. So that was all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Sorry, I steamrolled past you.
It's okay. I'll have a written report next month. Give me time to digest all this stuff.
Well, it's important because I had so much to say, which is, it's in my staff report. I don't have anything additional to add. Thank you, though. But I knew he did, so I gave him my time.
She let me encroach upon her space.
So shall we finish up with unfinished and new business?
Yes. And then,
Is there any unfinished business? Any new business? Matters presented by the board. John, do you have matters for the board?
I'm going to pass this month, thank you.
Reggie, if you're back on?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass too.
Wayne?
No, I don't have anything. Everything will be this month.
Don?
Couple things. I am trying to make the town of Urbana meetings when they have those, and it's convenient for me to go. Just because I think that the town and the county need to be in a better lockstep. So I've been trying to do that. Also, just for the public use, most all of us, I assume, there's been a touring of the properties that the county owns and some discussion individually about what could be done or not done with some of the excess property that the county owns. So, and I think all of us was involved in making some road trips on that. But it's important, and I think we need to continue to massage that. And lastly, I tried to be in touch with the museum on what's going on with them and what their needs are. They do have a fundraiser at Rosegill that's coming up in October, and I'm sure that'll be publicized for that as well, and I'm going to try to attend that as well.
Great. Thank you. I don't have anything. I'm going to open the floor for the ending public comment period. Would anybody wish to address the board? I'll close the public comment period. And
Mr. Chairman, real quick before you go into closed session, failed to say this during Charlie's report, but the Water Authority is coming in October as well with their quarterly report.
Oh, good.
They would have come this month, but Greg's, I think, out of the country or out of the state on a trip, and they wanted him present.
Good.
So they're going to come in next month as well.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding we will not be taking any action after the closed session, just for the public's information. And I do request that we utilize this room for the technology purposes so that we can ensure that Mr. Williams and Mr. Coons are able to participate, please. And if you're ready, I'll prepare the motion.
I'm ready.
All right. Mr. Chairman, we need a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A3 and A8. This is for the board's discussion and consideration of the disposition of real property for a public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the public body, and to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal questions about the acquisition of this property and the disposition thereof. Thank you.
So move. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. So, members of the public, I'm afraid we need to ask for you to wait outside.